Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Pick a Side podcast. My name is Joe Moran and I'm here with Jack Barteck, and this is now episode 74. In this episode, we will talk about Blake Griffin signing with the Brooklyn Nets, Mike Conley finally making an all-star appearance, Kevin Porter Jr. being called up by the Houston Rockets, and we'll also talk about which teams will have a great second half to the NBA season, and we're also going to talk about the rise of NBA Top Shot. And for the football portion of this episode, we'll talk about the Chargers' new OC Joe Lombardi, Chris Sims' quarterback rankings, reports of Jimmy Garoppolo maybe heading back to the New England Patriots, and if we're worried about the Cowboys now that they've signed Dak Prescott to a massive contract extension. And to end off the episode, we'll talk about the Washington football team and the New York Giants offseason. This is now episode 74, and we had a little bit of a technical delay in the beginning. There were two chairs here, but nobody was in them, but we're glad to have it back. It was a crazy ride. It was a crazy ride.
It was funny. It's just the chairs sitting there, and you could hear our voices supposedly, so a funny start, but glad we're finally on now.
Yeah, the streaming software is pretty buggy. And before we start, I just want to give a shout out to new people who have reviewed and rated our podcast. This is what they had to say. So the title of this review was The Goats by Jicky Jackson. Listen to every episode and don't plan on stopping. Love their versatility to talk hoops and football while also keeping listeners entertained throughout the entirety. Keep up the good work, boys. We appreciate that, Jicky Jackson. We appreciate your kind words. And this is another review. I have to get the picture right now. So the other review, I'm pretty sure, is from, let me see. It's from King Roy 23. The title of the review is called Great Podcast. And the description is, I love this podcast. I'm even starting to favor this show over some of the mainstream shows. First Take, Get Up, Undisputed, etc. A lot of great points throughout the whole show, every show. I've been looking for a podcast like this for so long. Keep grinding. You guys are going to blow up. You guys gained a loyal supporter. We appreciate that, King Roy. You guys are really doing, you guys are killing it with the descriptions and the reviews, because since we started talking about people potentially doing it, we have gotten a few every other week. And anybody that takes the time to do it, we appreciate you guys a lot. But I am pretty embarrassed that we started to such a bad start with this technical delay. If you guys were watching or were getting ready to watch the live, you guys know what we're talking about. If you guys listen to the audio version of the podcast, you have no idea. But let's start off this episode by talking about Blake Griffin to the Brooklyn Nets. See, you know I love the Nets. I've been a Nets fan since I don't know how long, since I was young, a young boy.
But you readopted the team a couple of weeks ago.
I've always been there, man. It's always been in my heart. You can't readopt something that's always been in your heart. I was going to wear my Kyrie Irving jersey, the city jersey that's right there. But not going to lie, I gained a couple pounds. I don't like the way it fits on my body. I feel it fits kind of tight. I don't want to be taking it on and off. But
you should have worn the beard.
I should have wore the beard. But that I wear it when we talk about James Harden. Blake Griffin to the Nets. At first, I know you didn't like the move. I like the move because I think right now the Nets have no playmaker off the bench, right? You know, Dinwiddie is still injured. Who knows if he's going to come back this season? There is no real point guard off the bench. I think Blake Griffin can play that point forward type role. If the Nets are getting a motivated Blake Griffin, which I think they are going to get, this was a steal of a move. I don't know if Blake will start because a starting lineup of Kyrie, Harden, KD, Blake, and maybe Jeff Green or Joe Harris seems kind of weird. There's definitely room for it to happen. The Nets have a lot of versatility now. In terms of rim protection, this doesn't help the Nets. In terms of defense, this doesn't help the Nets. But the Nets right now are 22nd in bench points with 33.6 points per game. First place right now is Detroit. Then you have the Jazz, the Clippers, and Lakers are all top 10. The bench for the Nets is 14th in net rating. They have a 0 net rating. So they're not minus and not plus in that category, and they're 17th in assists. I think by bringing Blake off the bench, that assist number will go up, and the Nets could potentially go from the 22nd team in bench points to the first. Right now, they're scoring 33 points off the bench. Number 1 is Detroit with 42. Can Blake Griffin get you 9 points? Yes, he can. They can go from 22nd to first with Blake coming off the bench, but who knows if he's going to come off the bench. That has not been announced yet. I hope he does.
Yeah.
But for rim protection, I think the Nets are fine. Nick Claxton has been averaging about 1.5 blocks per game. I don't think the Nets need to get an Andre Drummond or whoever else. I think Nick Claxton.
Nice, but yes, Nick Claxton coming back has made it not a necessity like it was.
I think Claxton is good. I think he can play that role very nicely. I don't see any reason why to go out and get another guy. I think Claxton is good. I worry about Claxton when he has to go up against Joel Embiid because he's skinny in frame, and I think JaVale McGee would be better to probably help guard him. But outside of that, I think this Nets team is pretty much complete, and this is the team we're going to see for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I would say I seemed very against the move at the beginning, but I wasn't as much against the move as much as I was against the role that I think a lot of people thought that he was going to play or still think he's going to play. And when you talk about him starting, I don't think there's any chance he should be starting. If you're bringing him in as a bench role, I think it's a great move. You're not going to find probably anybody in the league. I would say you won't find many guys in the league better for the value of I believe he got the veteran minimum, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to find many better players on the vet minimum than Blake Griffin, especially if you could get him half rejuvenated. You look back in 2018, he was an all-star and very well-deserving. Since then, he's a totally different player. He hasn't dunked since 2019. Granted, late in 2019, and that number is skewed because of the way the season was affected in 2020, but still, he's not the same explosive guy. He's not a great three-point shooter as much as he's improved that shot, shooting 31% from three on 6 attempts. So, he's a viable option shooting from the three-point line, but not a guy you want taking shots away from that big three or Joe Harris or even a guy like Bruce Brown the way he's been playing. So,
or Jeff Green.
Yeah, or Jeff Green when he gets back from injury. If you're telling me he's a bench player, I think it's a great move. But when people start talking about him being like either a starter or in the lineup at the end of games, I don't think that makes any sense. In my opinion, he doesn't provide anything to that starting unit. Like you said, he's a great addition to the bench. He could probably get you a solid 10 points a night with that second unit, and he will definitely make that second unit better if you can get half of what 2018 Blake was. And I think you've seen a little bit of a rejuvenation with DeAndre Jordan. I think you could get that same kind of thing out of Blake Griffin here, coming to a championship contender and just getting him to buy in a little bit more, which is, like I said, like what they've been able to do with DeAndre Jordan. But at the end of games, you want the three guys out there, and then I would rather see Joe Harris, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Nick Claxton all ahead of Blake Griffin in those situations because defensively, like you said, he's not a good defender anymore. He's not a good rebounder. So he doesn't add much in the categories that you've been lacking, and offensively, you have better options.
Personally, for me, I think you're being a little bit too harsh on Blake. I get it. I get it because he hasn't shown much. I'm okay with him finishing out games. I really am. If he's playing well that game, I have no problem with letting him continue to be out there and play. I'm not just going to sub him out because he's not playing. If he's playing well, I'm not going to do that. My prediction is that Blake Griffin will dunk in his first game with the Brooklyn Nets. That's my prediction. He will be in a pick-and-roll situation with James Harden, and he will get an easy lob dunk, and Blake Griffin will dunk. Do I think that he definitely doesn't have the athleticism that he once had? He's never going to get that back. He's been injured way too much. He's had a ton of knee injuries, but we see a trend of players that are older that we know they aren't what they once were, but every so often they can give you a glimpse of what they once were. And I think that'll be Blake. Maybe every other 4 or 5 games, he's going to get that 20 a night, especially with Brooklyn. He's going to really show out, and you're going to see, wow, it feels like I'm watching Los Angeles Clippers Blake Griffin. We're going to get a glimpse of that. I think right now, I wouldn't want to see Blake Griffin in spot-up shooter situations or play that role. He played it in Detroit this past season, and I mean, he was horrible in Detroit. Bad. I mean, he's tough to watch. I made a video about his career being over. How his career, as we once knew it, is over. That's for sure. Yeah. He's not Blake Griffin anymore. That's why when Bleacher Report and ESPN and all these other outlets put out graphics of Harden, KD, and Kyrie. Yes, Blake does not belong with those players. He still has that name. His cachet has that name, but he is not that player. The Nets are just getting a good bench role player. That's it. I don't think they're getting anything else. I don't think they're getting 20 points per game. I think best case scenario, they're getting an efficient 12 to 15 a night from Blake Griffin, and I think that's being generous, especially given how many players the Nets have on their team. I think that's being generous, but I think he can give you 4 to 6 assists a night, which is huge.
Yeah, and the worst case scenario is he doesn't pan out. He's just as bad as he was in Detroit, and all you signed him for was a vet min. So, I mean, like it's not like you made some huge investment here. If it really doesn't work out, you can just sit him on the end of the bench and it'll make no difference. Or you could release him. It really does not, like, it was a very low-risk, medium-ish reward move, I would say. So I can't be mad at it. My response yesterday was more so in response to people who were saying it was like adding a 4th star or this is the move that puts him over the top. I don't think it's that at all. If you didn't think the Nets were the championship favorites already, I don't think there's any way Blake Griffin signing should be the move that makes you say, oh, well, cancel the season, the league's over. Like, they were already championship favorites in my eyes, so obviously they're still championship favorites now. But people that didn't think they were, I don't see how Blake Griffin changes that for you.
I made a video about it. I made a segment about it on this podcast. The segment title was literally called "The Nets Will Win the 2021 NBA Championship." This was before they got Blake Griffin. I've said it before Harden got traded to Brooklyn. If Harden gets traded to Brooklyn, they're going to win the championship. There are still some people that are in denial about it. There are still some people that think the Lakers are going to win or anybody else. Nobody is beating the Brooklyn Nets. I'll say that once. I've said that a million times already. I'll say it again. Nobody is beating the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series. In the East, it's not even close. The only teams that have a shot are the Lakers, if we're being realistic, and that's because they have LeBron, and we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. But realistically, no team is beating the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series. And I think Blake Griffin is going to surprise some people with how he plays when he joins the Nets and when they play their next game. Because I think there was a little bit of a factor that he wasn't motivated in Detroit. He didn't really want to give it his all on a team that is really bad. With the Nets, he has some motivation. This is a chance for him to win a championship. So I think everything is there for him to play his best basketball, and I think that's what he'll do.
Yeah, and the Nets are really not only starting to turn a corner, they've turned a corner. Defensively, everybody is playing better. The energy level is higher, even against bad teams, which is something they struggled with early in the season. And then when they got Harden meshing together, they struggled beating bad teams. Now they're really starting to put it together, even without Kevin Durant, which is crazy to think. You're adding probably a top 3 player in the league. He'll be back probably soon after the All-Star break. So they are going to be a very tough team to beat.
No doubt about it.
And that's without Blake Griffin. I mean, adding him is just like, like I said, very low risk.
It's adding a cherry on a sundae.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
That's what it is. We're going to go into our next topic. We're going to talk about Mike Conley because I think he deserves his recognition, right? So when the All-Star voting came out, Anthony Davis was over Devin Booker. Everybody said Devin Booker got snubbed. We also placed Mike Conley there because he is on a number 1 team in the NBA right now in the Utah Jazz. But then Devin Booker sat out the All-Star game, and he was replaced by Mike Conley. And you still had people saying DeRozan got snubbed and other players, Shea, Gilgeous-Alexander. But I think Mike Conley finally becoming an All-Star was well-deserved because there have been about 3 to 4 times where he probably deserved to be an All-Star, and it would have been a shame if he were to finish his career without an All-Star appearance.
Yeah, 100%. His whole career in Memphis, he was on those great teams where, one, he was kind of overshadowed because it was a great unit. Like, they didn't have one superstar, I would say. It was a great unit of players, and so he never really got that recognition, along with the fact that the Western Conference guards were really good his whole career. So he kind of got screwed over in the Western Conference his whole career, and now it's not like it was given to him. It's not like it was a handout. You know, as much as it might have factored into the decision to give him the spot, he really earned it this year. He's playing great after a down year last year. He's really bounced back and helped lead the best team in basketball, not one of the best teams in basketball, and he has been such a key part of it. There is nobody more deserving, that was left off the original roster, I think, than Mike Conley.
I think the reason why he should have gotten even originally was because you look at past teams that have been really great, that have had great records. One that comes to mind is the Atlanta Hawks, a 60-win team. They had 4 All-Stars, Jeff Teague, Millsap, Al Horford, and Kyle Korver. And for a team to be as great as the Jazz have been so far, for them to only have Rudy and Mitchell is kind of downplaying Mike Conley's impact. Then we look at Golden State. I mean, Curry, Clay, Draymond. Yes, we know Draymond is an elite player and all of them deserve to be an all-star, but when you look at Draymond's stats, they never jumped out at you, but we put him in the all-star game because we knew he deserved that. When you look at Mike Conley right now, he's averaging 16 points per game, about 6 assists, shooting 44% from the field and 42% from 3. And when you talk about advanced stats, he's the leader in a lot of Utah Jazz advanced analytics. He's second in win shares on the Jazz versus Rudy Gobert. He's first in offensive box plus minus. He's tied first in box plus minus with Joe Ingles. And the Utah Jazz are plus 14 when Mike Conley is on the court, which is most on the team by about a point. So in almost every single advanced analytic, it shows that Mike Conley has been the most impactful player on the Utah Jazz this season.
Yeah, and he's not one of those flashy names. He never has been one of those flashy names, but he's always been so impactful to winning. And, you've seen it this year. He has taken one of the biggest leaps on that team from last season, and look at how much they've improved. Obviously, there's been other reasons for that, but I think Mike Conley having this resurgence of his career at this stage is one of the biggest reasons, and if you take him off this team, I definitely don't think they're having the same success.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we've been talking about the Utah Jazz a lot, going back and forth about whether they're contenders or pretenders. I checked the schedules and the strength of schedules. Utah Jazz have the easiest schedule going forward in the NBA.
That's crazy.
Which means that which means the toughest part of their schedule, which was what just happened, they pretty much dominated everybody. And I mean, their net rating is off the charts. And now they're getting into their the easiest part of their schedule. This team can finish with 50 wins. I think so. And that
in a shortened season.
Yes, in a short season. If this was a regular season with 82 games, they could have probably finished with 60-plus wins this season.
And the West will go through Utah more than likely, which, is widely considered to be one of the toughest places to play in basketball. So,
yeah, it is. It is.
It's going to be interesting. Like I was saying in that pretenders versus contenders, if there was ever a year for a team like the Jazz to have success without a big-time superstar, I think this is the year, at least to come out of the West. Because if they face a team like the Nets, I don't know how well they will be able to handle a team with that much star power. But a team like the Lakers, who have been dealing with injuries, the Clippers, who are still trying to figure out their footing and prove themselves, they really have a shot this year to come out of the West. And they're not to be taken lightly. I made that mistake already this year. They're not to be taken lightly.
I think the West this year is wide open only because Anthony Davis is injured.
Agreed.
If he wasn't injured, I think the Lakers would take it. But because AD is injured, I think the West is wide open, and any team could take it. You got Utah, you got the Lakers, you got the Clippers. Denver, we can't sleep on them because we know what they've done in the playoffs in the previous years. And the Phoenix Suns are also an up-and-coming young team. Chris Paul, he's going to play great in the playoffs. Devin Booker, yet to be seen. DeAndre Ayton, yet to be seen. We'll see how those young guys play, but we know Chris Paul is going to show up no matter what. They almost beat Houston last year in a 7-game series. Shea didn't have his best series. Neither did Danilo. It was mostly Chris Paul really putting OKC on his back, and they almost beat the Rockets.
Yeah, and to think, like, the next 3 teams would be, like, the Mavericks, the Trailblazers, the Warriors, who are all also really great teams. I think the Western Conference playoffs are going to be really fun to watch. Like, I don't think there's going to be a bad matchup in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think every game, every series in the Western Conference is going to be a really tough series. Every single series.
All of those seeds 4 through 8, usually there, or I should say 5 through 8. There's usually one you look at, or one or two teams that you look at, and you're like, we really got to avoid those guys. All of those teams 5 through 8, and then even when you get into like 9 through 11, you look at them and you're like, that's a tough matchup.
Yeah, because Portland, even though they are not the highest seed right now, if you face them in the playoffs, they're going to have CJ and Nurkic back. So they are going to be a fully healthy team in the playoffs, which nobody wants to face a fully healthy Blazers team in the playoffs. So the West is definitely something to watch out for. Now shifting gears, we talked about the top teams in the West. Now we're about to talk about one of the bottom teams in the Western Conference, and that is the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets are on a 13-game losing streak, which is horrible. I mean, when James Harden first got traded, the Rockets went on a 5-game winning streak, I believe. Their defense was one of the best in the NBA. Christian Wood gets hurt. He goes down, and that kind of ruins a lot of the momentum for them. He's still been out. I think if it wasn't for Christian Wood getting injured, he would have been an all-star this season. So him getting hurt has a lot to do with why the Rockets are so bad right now. But a bright spot in what's been a pretty miserable season for Houston Rockets fans, especially after losing James Harden, is that they traded for Kevin Porter Jr., and he has a ton of potential. I mean, he should have been a top 10 pick, but because of character issues and a lot of that other stuff, he dropped down to the low 20s, got picked up by Cleveland. It ended bad there. He got shipped off to Houston. Then Houston put him on the Vipers, their G League affiliate, and he averaged 24, 6, and 7 in the G League, shot 45% and 32% from 3. They have just called up Kevin Porter Jr., so he will be on the active roster. What do you expect from Kevin Porter Jr.? Do you think he'll make an immediate impact?
Yeah, I think he should come in and immediately be playing well. I don't think his play was ever a question. You mentioned the only thing that made him not a top 10 pick was the character issues, and it's followed him right to the NBA. It's the reason he didn't start out playing this year, the reason he got his locker taken by Taurean Prince, and then the reason why he got shipped out of Cleveland because he acted immature when they gave his locker away, which, again, was just his fault. So he can't get out of his own way, and if he can, he has all the talent in the league to be a star. You've seen it in the G League. I get it. It's not NBA-level competition, but it's guys who play at an NBA level. It's no joke. It's no slouch league. So the fact that he's been putting up those numbers in the G League, he should at least be able to come in and give you something like 14 points a night on some pretty good shooting. And he was playing well in Cleveland when he had the opportunity to over the past 2 seasons, I believe. So, the talent is 100% there, but it's just about getting him in check. I think they have a couple good leaders in that locker room in Houston that could try and get him on the right path, but that's the most important thing because he's got all the talent in the world. It's just about getting him on the straight and narrow.
KPJ had some big games in Cleveland. He actually had one against the Rockets when he was in Cleveland. I think he should be playing a lot of minutes as soon as they activate him. As soon as we come back from this All-Star break, Houston's first game, Kevin Porter Jr. should be playing 20-plus minutes a night.
Yeah.
When you look at this Houston Rockets roster, I kind of feel bad at the direction that they're heading in because you look at their old players, John Wall, Oladipo, PJ Tucker, Daniel House is like a tweener. He's only 27, but he's still a part of the old Rockets regime. He's not a part of this new Rockets roster. Then you look at Eric Gordon as well, and young players. Christian Wood is a guy to be really excited about. Jayshawn Tate, I like him. He's a good role player, but are we going to call him a young player with this young core? He's 25 years old. I think what you see from Jayshawn Tate is what you're going to get, which is a good player, but it's not nothing to rave about when you talk about your young core. Then you look at Mason Jones, an undrafted player who I think is an okay scorer, but is he something to really rave about when you talk about the young core of a team? I don't really think so. So the only 2 guys they have on their young core is Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. that you really have to be excited about going forward, to be honest. And they can trade Oladipo for a young player, I believe, or a pick. I think they'll trade PJ Tucker for a pick. And sadly, they're going to have to stick with John Wall. I know John Wall has been playing pretty good for the Rockets, but considering the direction the Rockets want to go in, John Wall doesn't really fit their timetable. But you can't trade him because his contract is crazy. And Daniel House and Eric Gordon, I think they can stay. I don't mind them. But Houston has to really hope that one of the picks that they acquired lands into one of the top 10 or top 5 picks in this upcoming draft, because I believe they actually have a chance to land the top pick in this draft. It's not just next year's draft. It's actually this draft. If they can do that, we never know what can happen. Like, imagine going from James Harden to now lucking out to a Cade Cunningham or a Jonathan Kuminga or Evan Mobley.
Especially the way lottery is now. Look at the year the Pelicans got Zion. I mean, I don't remember exactly where they were in the lottery, but they jumped up quite a few spots, I believe, to get to number 1. And there's a couple other examples over the past few years.
So right now, according to Tankathon, the Houston Rockets are projected to get the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And it's their pick.
Oh, they have their pick this year.
So they are projected to get the number 3 overall pick in this draft. So moving forward, they could have a young core of Christian Wood or Kevin Porter Jr. and whoever else. But back to the question about Kevin Porter Jr., I think he's going to be pretty good for the Rockets. I know that a lot of Rockets fans and a lot of NBA fans in general have been comparing him to a young James Harden. I don't see that. Everybody has to calm down. I know he's a lefty, so it's
I
really
can see where they get it.
Yes,
from.
It's really easy to make that comparison. But Kevin Porter Jr. I think can be a great player, but we tend to forget that James Harden is special. He is all-time great, special, a rarity in the NBA. I don't think that's going to be Kevin Porter Jr., but I think he can be a really good young player for the Rockets, and hopefully he can keep his attitude in check, because if he does that, then he can really blossom and flourish, because that's what's really holding him back.
Yeah, and that Pelicans draft lottery, by the way, they had the 7th best odds, so it just goes to show you how wacky the draft lottery can be. But you mentioned, the Rockets are kind of at a crossroads right now. They don't have anything to lose. I mean, they're one of the worst teams in the league. They're not going anywhere. So what does it hurt to put one of your 2 young guys out there with any potential for, like you said, 20 minutes a night? I think it would be very beneficial to see what you have. And maybe if he gets playing more and plays a bigger role, he will be more willing to buy in and commit to the basketball court rather than whatever he has going on off of it. But I think him and Christian Wood are 2 good building blocks, but you need to have some more pieces around them. And right now they don't. They need to figure out something to do with Victor Oladipo because he's not coming back. So you got to figure out a way to get something in return for him. And then from there, it's going to be a tough road ahead. But PJ Tucker's another move they can make. And they're going to have to hit on that pick this year because
if we're being honest,
restock the cupboard.
If we're being honest, if Houston hits on this pick and they have a 14% chance of getting the number 1 pick, Christian Wood develops, Kevin Porter Jr. develops, they trade away a lot of their guys for draft picks, they draft well, this can be a really good team. This rebuild can be quicker than usual. This was the best year to trade James Harden because this is the most loaded draft class that we've had in a while. A lot of people are excited about this. I know we just had one in 2018.
Yeah.
A really loaded one. But this is another really loaded draft class.
It's deep.
And who knows, if the Rockets rebuild correctly, they have a great team, Harden could come back later on in the future. I know a lot of Rockets fans are holding out hope for that. He could come back and win a chip with Houston, kind of like LeBron did with the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I don't know.
LeBron went to Miami. He won a chip. Then he went back to Cleveland and won a chip for the city. James Harden goes to Brooklyn and wins a chip. He's going to win 2 chips. Then he goes back to Houston and he wins a chip there for his city and retires a Houston Rockets champion and a Brooklyn Nets champion. I'm telling you, Harden's going to do that. It's going to happen.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And where do you think Kevin Porter Jr. plays a role in that?
Shooting guard. What Kyrie's playing now. Harden's always been a point guard. He's always been a point guard.
I do think Kevin Porter Jr. should play a big role on this year's team because they don't have there's no incentive for them other than to see what they have in their young guys, and there's only 2 guys really worth looking at right now, and that's Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. So give him his minutes.
I agree. I just hope that they don't prematurely fire Steven Silas because I think this roster that he's been given is not a good roster at all. This is coming off the coattails of the small ball roster, which was unsuccessful. So because of that, I hope they do give Steven Silas a little bit more time to see if he truly is a good or bad coach, because I think you can't make that decision off of this roster at all. Now, talking about teams, we talked about a good one in the Utah Jazz with Mike Conley. Then we talked about the Houston Rockets, a bad team. Now we're going to talk about teams that may surprise us in the second half of the NBA season. The All-Star break just happened. I think we're returning back to basketball on Thursday. That's the first game that's going to be scheduled. And what teams are going to surprise you, or do you think will surprise you in the second half of the season? In this segment, I don't want to hear teams that are number one seed already. So I don't want to hear, Philadelphia, Utah, Clippers, Lakers, under those. I want to hear some sleeper teams. What are some sleeper teams that you have?
So the first one I went with was the Miami Heat, which is kind of like not as much of a sleeper as I think you would have liked to hear, but just because what they went through in the first half of the season, I think a lot of people are down on them right now, but they were dealing with injuries the entire first half. They didn't really get into a rhythm at any point. And when they did start to get into a semi-rhythm, you saw them start to turn things around a little bit. And now they're already back up to 6th when they were like at 13th in the conference a couple of weeks ago, I think. So now that they're starting to get healthy, if they can get into a rhythm, I don't think they'll be as good as they were last year, but I definitely think they will become a playoff lock. I think they could become a top 4 seed eventually by the end of the season if they remain healthy. So I think that's a team that could turn it around in the second half. Another team that is pretty high in the seeding, but I think will surprise some people in the second half is the Charlotte Hornets. I love LaMelo Ball in the starting lineup. I think they're starting to put a couple things together, and I think that addition of LaMelo to the starting lineup is improving the play of everybody on that roster. Although they're young, I like them in the second half, and I think that they're going to be another team that's going to be a playoff lock.
While researching for this segment, I had to look at strength of schedule, and that had to be a factor. These are the five teams with the easiest strength of schedule moving forward. The Utah Jazz are 1. The Dallas Mavericks are 2. The Brooklyn Nets are 3. The Miami Heat are 4, and the Denver Nuggets are 5. For my sleeper team, I have 2 in particular that are on this list. The Dallas Mavericks are 1. They're 18-16. They are 8th seed right now. But to start the season, they were crippled by COVID and injuries. They are just starting to get healthy. Porzingis missed 13 games. Maxi Kleber missed 11. Josh Richardson and Finney Smith missed 8 games. And now they're finally healthy. Just before the All-Star break when they faced Orlando, they had a starting lineup of Luka, Josh Richardson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, and Kristaps Porzingis. So they're all healthy, and Tim Hardaway Jr. coming off the bench is really huge for them. I think he fits that role perfectly. He's going to do kind of what Terrence Ross does in Orlando, play that bench role and just come off the bench and score. And Jalen Brunson is a starting point guard in the league, and he plays really great for the Mavericks night in and night out. And we can't forget about Trey Burke and the spark that he brings. Dwight Powell is also out there. And so I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to have a great second half to the NBA season. They're 8th seed right now. The Warriors are outside looking in. They're the 9th seed. It's really hard to say that the Warriors are going to make the playoffs if the Mavericks are healthy and they're starting to find a groove. Unless San Antonio drops out. Unless San Antonio drops out. But the Golden State Warriors may miss the playoffs if the Mavericks start to catch fire, and I think they will catch fire. Then you look at the Denver Nuggets. They're 21-15. They're the 6th seed, but Gary Harris has missed 17 games. PJ Dozier has missed 15. JaMychal Green has missed 11. Millsap and Porter Jr. have missed 10 each. And right now they have 3 key injuries still. JaMychal Green has a shoulder injury. Paul Millsap is dealing with a knee injury. And Gary Harris is still dealing with a thigh. There is no real legit timetable for their return. I'm not sure when they're going to come back. But when they're healthy, when the Nuggets are healthy, you got a lineup of Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., or Will Barton, whoever you want to slide in there, Paul Millsap, Nikola Jokic. Then off the bench, Monte Morris, Will Barton, JaMychal Green, PJ Dozier, and Campazzo. and Hartenstein is playing pretty well. This team is legit, and everybody is sleeping on them because they haven't been healthy all year. The record doesn't really show how good the Denver Nuggets are, and we can't forget about Nikola Jokic. If the Denver Nuggets start to catch fire and they start to get a higher seed, they're only 2.5 games behind the third seed. We might be hearing more rumblings about a Nikola Jokic MVP because the Nuggets are starting to win. I just hope that Gary Harris returns. So does Paul Millsap and JaMychal Green. More so Gary Harris, though, because I think he does a really great job on defense and he spaces the floor really well. I would like to see them back, but when they're healthy, they are a dangerous team.
Now, let me ask you something, because this is something I was trying to look for when I was researching. If you had to choose one team right now that's out of the playoffs to make the playoffs, who would it be? Because I was struggling with this one. I think the playoff teams right now look pretty good.
The Warriors would be my first pick in the West. And the East were the ones that are outside looking in.
So it's the Bulls at 9, then the Pacers, the Hawks, the Wizards, the Cavs, the Magic, and
the Pacers would be my other pick.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
The Knicks actually have one of the hardest schedules in the second half of the year.
You think they're not going to make it?
No, I didn't say that. I just said they have the hardest schedule in the second half of the season. They have one of the hardest schedules.
The East is so tight. I mean, from like even the Celtics at 4 all the way until the Hawks really, or the Wizards at 14 and 20. Like, there is not that big of a gap. It's only like a 5-game difference between all of those teams. So.
And you mentioned the other team, the Miami Heat. Over the last 15 games, they have had the number 1 ranked defense in the NBA. So they're playing well, and unlike the Nuggets, the Miami Heat are healthy now. They're only missing Avery Bradley, which he's a good piece.
He's a luxury.
But the Lakers won a championship without him last season. It wasn't like Avery Bradley was make or break for the Lakers. I don't think he's make or break for the Miami Heat. So the Miami Heat are finally healthy. Their core is healthy. Because of that, I think they'll make a really good run in the second half of the season. But I think at the end of the year, we're going to talk about the Mavericks, the Nuggets, and Miami, and talk about them and say, wow, people were wrong about the Mavericks and the Heat especially because of their slow starts. Everybody kind of had them missing the playoffs. Same thing with the Raptors. The Raptors solidified their spot a little bit earlier, but people were still down on the Mavericks and the Heat. And now that they're really kicking it up, you're not really hearing that chatter anymore, especially now. When the season is over, everybody's going to look back at now and be like, why did we think they were going to miss the playoffs?
And it's funny. It happens like pretty much every year. There's one team that gets out of the gate slow, but it's happened to multiple teams this season. And I think that has a lot to do with the landscape of the NBA since a year ago and how different things have been. You don't understand how much of a rhythm these guys are in with their bodies. And when you start to change that rhythm, it takes a toll on their bodies. So the fact that so many teams have been able to come back healthy is impressive, but it's no surprise to me at all that a couple of teams at least have gotten off to tough starts with injuries and stuff like that affecting them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, on to the next segment. This is a little bit of a fun segment. It's a little bit of a speculative segment. We're going to talk about NBA Top Shot. It's this new thing. It's a new trend everybody's been talking about it. So just to give you guys a rundown on what NBA Top Shot is, it's digital collectibles. It's like card collecting, but just digitally. And instead of collecting an image or a picture on a card, you collect highlights, GIFs, or clips of a player hitting a 3, hitting a dunk, getting a steal, whatever it may be. And 40,000 people have joined NBA Top Shot. And I got to say, this is pretty crazy. I was on it today and I was looking at it. There are highlights of LeBron James hitting a regular 3-pointer in the regular season that costs $1,000. Things like that it's pretty crazy. Like LaMelo Ball making a pass is like $500. And basically how these digital collectibles are valued is based on their serial number. So when you talk about cards and, there are some cards that are rare, there are some cards that are not. The rarity is about how many there are available, how many there are in circulation. So NBA Top Shot puts serial numbers on these digital collectibles, And if there's not a lot of these highlights or clips, then they're worth even more. And some highlights are the same, and they're worth more because they are branded as, like a gold edition of the highlight, kind of like Ultimate Team, or I know a lot of people play like Madden Ultimate Team or My Team in 2K, kind of like that. And for me, I don't want to totally downplay this trend and what's happening, but it definitely feels like a trend to me, and that's about it. Because I get it that people are really hyped about it. You see a lot of NBA players buying this stuff. But at the same time, my first thought that came into my head is, why would anybody buy highlight clips? Why would anybody buy GIFs? To me, it just doesn't make sense. And to be fair, I've never been an avid card collector. I have some cards, but I'm not over here looking for the most investment-worthy card ever. It's just whatever to me. I've never been a guy that's like, cards are, really valuable to me. So maybe that's why I don't get this digital collectible thing. But to me, it feels really phony. That's the word to describe it.
I totally get what you're saying, and I remember when I first heard about it, I was confused for months on what it actually was. I didn't really learn what it was until I was telling you before. Kenny, KOT4Q on YouTube, a great YouTube account, put up a video opening NBA Top Shot packs, and then it started to make a little bit more sense. And I was just as confused, like, why would somebody pay for that? But I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll say, I would imagine, and again, this is long before our time, so I can't speak from experience, but I would imagine that trading cards probably started out the same way. People were probably like, why would you pay for just a picture of a guy on a piece of paper? And look what they've grown to be. I think there's two things that play into it. And the first one I'll say is people want to be a part of things. Like you said, I think it was 40,000 people have already joined up and started buying and selling Top Shot cards, NBA players, influencers, I guess you would say, from YouTube and stuff like that, big-time basketball names in the community. And people want to be a part of that. People think it's cool to be doing something that somebody that they follow does as well. So I think that could be a big part of its growing popularity. And the second thing is something that has become wildly commoditized, starting with video games, and it's the thrill of opening things and trying to get a reward back. It happens with trading cards. You buy a pack of cards hoping to get that rare card. You play a video game, you play Ultimate Team, you'll spend $20 buying packs trying to get that elite player. And it's just the rush. Like, it's not even as much getting the item, it's the rush of getting something rare. And I think that is what NBA Top Shot is trying to hit on with the serial numbers. Anybody could go on YouTube and look up highlights, but you own that 1 of 100 LeBron James three-pointer.
But I don't think it's even owning it, because how can you own a highlight clip? Because just because you opened up a LeBron dunking on a guy, like let's talk about the Yusuf Nurkic dunk when LeBron dunked on Yusuf Nurkic.
It's one of the biggest selling ones on the platform.
Let's say you own that card. It's not like ESPN can't show it. It's not like I can't make a video right now on YouTube and add that highlight into my YouTube video. I can still do that. So it's not like you own the video or the clip. But the reason why I don't think that argument makes sense when people use it is that when you get a trading card, it's not like you own that picture. You don't own that picture on the trading card. You can easily counterfeit the trading card, but obviously it's not going to be the same. That's why for me, it's like people dictate value. So whatever people dictate deem to be valuable that's what's going to sell. So it doesn't matter if you think a trading card is just a picture on a piece of paper or these highlights are just digital clips. If somebody is willing to pay for it, there's going to be a market for it. Just like I said, the highlights can be replicated, so can pictures on these sports cards. They can be replicated as well. This whole thing in Rise of NBA Top Shot is just kind of really weird to me right now. I'm going to be honest. Is it something that I'm going to be investing in? Hell no. Not even a chance. I will not drop $1 into NBA Top Shot. Will I regret it in the future? Probably not. If I'm telling you now, if NBA Top Shot does become a phenomenon and the investments are deemed worth it. Even if they are deemed worth it, I wouldn't really feel like I missed out. Just like how trading cards, you can flip trading cards right now. Just because I'm not flipping trading cards doesn't mean I feel left out. I really don't care. So I don't care that I'm not making money off of trading cards. So because of that, I don't think if NBA Top Shot, if it does blow up, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't affect me in any way. Because at this point, I just don't think it's a smart investment to make. I'm not paying hundreds of dollars for a clip. It's just not me.
I don't see myself investing in an NBA Top Shot pack. I don't even know how to word it. I don't know how I don't see myself buying any NBA Top Shots, but I do think it's something very interesting and something to keep an eye on, because this can be the future of trading cards, or the demise of trading cards and the future of collectibles in sports.
And that's another thing, is I think this will be the decline of trading cards, simply because this generation, and I was listening to a Mark Cuban interview, and he said this perfectly. This generation does not have a fascination with the physical item of a card. We don't have that fascination. We are a digital generation. We grew up in it. We were growing up into it. But now these younger kids are growing up in it. They are already 3 years old with an iPad in their hand. That's all they know. When you play video games like 2K, like Madden, like FIFA, you use real money to buy packs to better your team, right? And instead of them having a pack of physical cards, they just have all the stuff digitally, and it's easy. When you talk about trading cards, to flip trading cards, you have to go and ship them out to get graded. It gets shipped back to you. Then you got to ship them out to the buyer, all of this other stuff. On this marketplace, you can buy and sell like that. There's really no hassle to it. And that's really convenient. And we are a lazy generation when it comes to doing stuff like that, because I wouldn't even say really lazy, but just using our time more effectively. Because we are not, if we don't have to do something, we don't have to spend an hour on something when we don't have to, then we're not going to. We value our time more. And I think NBA Top Shot has made it so people can buy and sell easy without any hassle. And I think that's the upside in it. I think there is a big chance that this does replace trading cards as a whole, because the younger generation is going to be getting into it. And when you see NBA players promoting it like they are, Tyrese Halliburton talking about how many stuff he has already, how many packs he's bought, and you look at KOT4K making videos about it. The more popular people that make videos about this stuff, about NBA Top Shot, and the more influencers that continue to push it, the bigger it's going to be.
Yeah, and everything is moving digital now, and I think that this is just the movement of trading cards digitally. And you got to give credit to NBA Top Shot, the way they've been able to market their brand and get off to a head start. Now they have to take advantage of it, but you can't put yourself in a much better position than having the NBA players that you're making these moments out of representing your product and using your product on their platforms, and having influencers using it and marketing it. So they're off to a great start, and I really do think, as much as a couple months ago I was laughing at it, I really do think that this has a chance to be the next big thing.
You knew about it a couple months ago?
Yeah, I had heard about it, and I was like, what is this? At first, I thought it was like a physical box that you opened and a highlight played, and I didn't even think twice about it. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just, like you said, a trend, and I thought it would fizzle out. And now it's just gotten bigger and bigger, and it's turned into something that, you almost can't avoid now if you follow the NBA on Twitter. It comes up a decent amount from the people that I follow. It's
pretty crazy. We'll see where it does end up, but one thing is certain, I'm not going to be investing in it. That's for certain. I can lose out. It doesn't matter. I'm not really too invested in it. I'm not hell bent on doing it, and I'm not that worried. So next topic we're going to talk about football. So that's going to do it for the basketball portion of the podcast. It was a really short portion of basketball that we talked about. The All-Star weekend happened, and because of that, there haven't been games, so there hasn't really been anything to talk about. But our next episode, we'll probably have way more to talk about. We'll probably have some fun segments when we talk about basketball. But now we're going to move on to football. And This segment is for all our Chargers fans out there that watch our content, because we haven't really talked about this at all yet. And I think this is an important topic to talk about. The Los Angeles Chargers hired Joe Lombardi to be their new offensive coordinator. And of course, this is a big deal because they need to maximize Justin Herbert while he's on his rookie contract. And they really have no room to mess up a hire. And are you worried at all about Joe Lombardi being the Chargers' new offensive coordinator, or were you okay with the move?
I will say I am slightly worried. He has not had success in other opportunities, though he's worked with some good quarterbacks. I'll give him credit. He's worked with Matt Stafford. He's worked with Drew Brees. So he's been around good quarterbacks. So I think that's a positive of him coming to this young quarterback and bring him a lot of knowledge. I know Coach Staley thinks very highly of him. They worked together in the past, and bringing him into the offensive coordinator role is, says a lot about how much he trusts Lombardi in that role. And one other positive I will say is there's definitely going to be no question Justin Herbert is going to be slinging the rock. He is going to be throwing the football. That's been a staple of Joe Lombardi. Everywhere he's been, in Detroit especially, he threw the ball at ridiculous rates with Matthew Stafford. Granted, with Calvin Johnson, it's kind of hard not to throw the ball, but there's no question Justin Herbert's going to throw the ball. Maybe a little bit too much. My concern is that he hasn't had much success elsewhere, especially with a guy who I think was super talented in Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. So it's a risky move, and I don't know if a risky move was the best thing to go after with a guy like Justin Herbert, who, I think it would have been smarter to bring in a more set infrastructure, if that makes sense.
For me, I'm kind of split between the middle because I think Joe Lombardi, his resume speaks for itself, right? When you look at the New Orleans aspect of his resume, it jumps out at you. He's been a quarterback coach for the Saints for 5 years. He's worked with Drew Brees. Drew Brees speaks very highly of Joe Lombardi. Sean Payton does as well. And then when you get into the Detroit Lions aspect of his coaching career, it kind of goes downhill. 2 underwhelming years. He didn't even last 2 seasons. In 2014, Detroit had the 22nd ranked offense. And in 2015, they had the 18th ranked offense, but Joe Lombardi was fired after a 1-6 start after just 7 games because the offense was not performing. Matthew Stafford had some of his lowest quarterback ratings of his career when he was paired up with Joe Lombardi. And I know the argument that a lot of people like to use for that is everybody does bad in Detroit. That may be true, but not everybody outside of Matthew Stafford does bad in Detroit, because Matthew Stafford has been the most consistent player for the Lions for the past 10 seasons. We know he's with the Rams now, and when you look at Matthew Stafford's Lions career, the worst 2 seasons outside of his rookie year were the years that Joe Lombardi was the offensive coordinator. So that does scare me, and they had good talent. They had Eric Ebron, who did have a problem catching the ball. He dropped a lot of balls. Golden Tate was there. Calvin Johnson. They had a good receiving core. Jock Bell was their running back. I don't know what type of scheme they're going to bring to the Chargers yet, because in Detroit, it was mostly like a power run scheme. But with the Chargers, I think it's going to be more spread. I listened to Joe Lombardi's introductory interview press conference with the Chargers, and I liked the things that he said. He said that he's going to try to build an offense around Justin Herbert. Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi have chemistry together because Joe Lombardi was Brandon Staley's OC in college. Brandon Staley was a former quarterback. So that's a plus, but this wasn't the move to sell me on Justin Herbert is going to be the MVP, because I think the talent is there. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler is going to be back. I think they fixed the offensive line, but the only thing that's making me hold my tongue in regards to Justin Herbert having an MVP-like year next season is Joe Lombardi. If it was any other accomplished coordinator in the NFL, I would have said Herbert is the guy. But because it is Joe Lombardi, I'm kind of taken aback a little bit, and I want to see how it goes. I want to see what happens in free agency because Trey Turner is probably getting cut or traded, so they have to fill a guard spot. They have to get a tackle outside of Bulaga. They have to get a left tackle. They have to get a center. They have to fill every position on that offensive line outside of Bulaga, so it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I think one of the worst moves of this offseason, although a young offseason for them, is losing Pep Hamilton. He was so instrumental to Justin Herbert's growth this past season, and he was the one guy that I really wanted to see them keep aboard on that coaching staff. And for Lombardi, I think one of his Achilles' heels was not being willing to adjust. I think he tried to use the same offense in Detroit that he used in New Orleans, and it didn't work out as well with Matt Stafford as it did for Drew Brees. So if he goes to Los Angeles, is he going to try and just force the same system on Herbert, even if he's not working? Because I think he's kind of similar in skill set to a Matt Stafford type player rather than more of a Drew Brees. So if the system isn't working, is he going to be willing to work with Justin Herbert and figure out what works for him? Or is he going to be dead set on implementing his system, everybody else be damned? So that's a concern for me.
In 23 games under Joe Lombardi, Matthew Stafford averaged 266 yards per game. He threw 34 touchdowns and 21 interceptions and completed 61% of his passes. In 23 games after Lombardi was fired, Stafford averaged 266 yards per game, so the same yardage per game, but he threw 42 touchdowns and only 12 interceptions, and he completed 67% of his passes. So he took care of the ball way better after Lombardi was gone. Is that just Stafford not being a good decision maker? Lombardi's play calling? We can't really tell. I haven't watched the film yet. I haven't went back and watched Detroit Lions 2014 season, so I really can't say, and I can't give a definitive answer. But I think it is a concern. We'll see what happens, though, because, in the press conference, Joe Lombardi did say, Sean Payton says this all the time, familiarity is better than ability. And Staley and Lombardi are very familiar with each other. They have a relationship already, which I think is a huge plus. You want your coaching staff to get along with each other. As Jets fans, we know when Adam Gase was the coach, they forced Greg Williams onto him. Adam Gase couldn't pick his own coaching staff, and I think that had a lot to do with Adam Gase's failure as a head coach. But Brandon Staley gets to pick his own guys, so at this point, it's just trusting in him. The good thing about it is that I think even if we don't see a great season by the offense, I think that defense is going to be great because the Chargers have an identical personnel to what the Rams had when we talk about defense. Derwin James is the perfect safety for what Brandon Staley wants to do on defense. So I think as a whole, their defense is going to be one of the top defenses in the league. It's really if that offense can take that next step.
Yeah, and I think defense was the way to go for a head coach. I would have liked for them to have brought in a more sure thing as the offensive coordinator, but I think shoring up that defense is going to make Justin Herbert look much better because as great as he looked last season, the reason the wins weren't coming is because the defense couldn't get a stop. So I think that defense improving is going to make Herbert look a lot better this season.
Yep. Next topic we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some 2021 NFL quarterbacks, but we're going to be reacting to a list that a former quarterback made. His name is Chris Sims. This list caught traction on social media. A lot of people called Chris Sims an idiot. They said he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then that was followed up with a lot of people posting and talking about Chris Sims' former resume when ranking quarterbacks. So before we give you this quarterback ranking, I'm just going to talk about Chris Sims' resume. So last season, I believe, who was a rookie this past season? Herbert and Burrow? Yeah, he had Burrow 1 and Herbert 2, and he didn't have Tua.
I think he had Tua around like 5 or 6.
Yes, he had Tua even below Jordan Love. In 2019, he had Kyler Murray 1. He missed on Daniel Jones.
That was his biggest miss.
And I don't even think that's a miss because Daniel Jones is like, okay, he's like a whatever quarterback. In 2018, he had Josh Allen 1, Lamar 2, Baker, and Darnold and Rosen. So he was spot on with that draft. He was high on Mahomes before the draft as well. So he has a track record of being right on these quarterbacks, and he just released his list. So number 1, he has Zach Wilson. Number 2, it's Trevor Lawrence. Number 3, it's Mac Jones. Number 4, it's Kellen Mond. Number 5, it's Justin Fields. And number 6, it's Trey Lance. Now I just want to ask you this question first, Jack. You were very down on Mac Jones. And for Chris Sims to have him rank 3, I mean, how do you feel about that?
I was surprised. I was really surprised with the list in general. I mean, I'll say one of the guys that I've been mentioning, I feel like in a bunch of different previews, is Kellen Mond. And even as much as I think he would be a good value for where you could get him at, I think having him at 4 ahead of Fields and Lance is crazy talk. And that's from, I've been pretty high on Kellen Mond. So we wouldn't be talking about this if he didn't have the resume of success ranking quarterbacks in the past. So, I mean, you have to take it with at least, some substance here because he's done a great job in the past.
I take it with some substance, but I'll say this. He's wrong about Kellen Mond. I am 100% certain of it. If Kellen Mond, I think he can develop into a starter. No doubt about it. But I think Justin Fields and Trey Lance have way more potential.
Yeah,
franchise quarterback potential. I don't see what he sees in Kellen Mond. And to be fair, last year, in 2019 in the draft, he ranked Ryan Finley above Daniel Jones. So I think this is the Ryan Finley of this quarterback list, Kellen Mond being at 4, because I watched him at A&M, and I never thought anything of it. I thought he was an okay college quarterback. He kind of reminds me of Phillip Rivers in his release, his posture, his throwing motion.
He looks uncomfortable.
He reminds me of Phillip Rivers. It's an awkward release. Not saying it can't be successful because Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback in my opinion. So it can be, but I'm not high on Kellen Mond.
I would say on Mac Jones, even though I've sounded very critical of him, I think he can definitely become a starting quarterback in the league. I think he can be a good quarterback. I just don't see him ever becoming a star or a franchise quarterback. So to me, seeing him at 3 was crazy. But I thought that, again, I'm very high on Zach Wilson, but him above Lawrence was another eye-opener for me. I love Zach Wilson, but I don't know if he'll ever beat Trevor Lawrence.
I'm going to be honest with you. I just started evaluating these quarterbacks. I started with Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
I finished watching every game of his. When I tell you Zach Wilson was near flawless, he was near flawless. Watching Zach Wilson, I fell in love with the football player. I fell in love with a human being. The way he throws that football is something special. I mean, he has a very quick release. He can throw off platform. He fits the ball into really tight windows. It's something really special about him. He has great ball placement, great anticipation. He can move and get yardage with his legs. He goes through reads well. He studies the game. There are a lot of things that I like about Zach Wilson, a lot. And I don't think it's crazy to say that he can have a better career than Trevor Lawrence. I think as a prospect, because you do have to take into account the body of work. Lawrence has been doing this for a couple of years now. So because of that, I would, just off of my gut feeling, I would put Lawrence number 1, but Zach Wilson, I'm telling you, he is special. And I told you this through text message. I told you, if I were the Jets, I wouldn't trade for Watson. I'm hell-bent on getting Wilson at number 2 and building around him, and that's it. I think Wilson can be a top 10, top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and because of that, I think he'll be good. The only thing I'm concerned about Wilson is when I was looking at his film, something that he tends to do is that he tends to lower his shoulder when he goes out and he runs, and I'm worried about that because he's already had a shoulder injury. He's had a broken wrist. He has durability concerns, and a quarterback who goes out and runs and doesn't slide much, it worries me because if you take that one big hit in the NFL, you can get hurt and you can be out for a couple of games. And we know with the Jets the past couple of years, Sam Darnold getting injured has pretty much put a nail in our season for the past couple of years. His rookie year, he got injured for a couple games. Then his second year, when we were so hyped with our free agency signings, Darnold got mono. So is Zach Wilson going to have those same durability concerns? That's my concern with Zach Wilson. Another one of my concerns is that his timing sometimes is a little bit off. Sometimes he allows defenders to get into position to bat the ball down, but a lot of people want to knock Wilson for the competition he played and stuff like that. I'm gonna tell you right now, BYU did not have much separators. Like Garrett Romney and Dax Milne, they're good receivers, and they were better receivers most of the time, but they were more jump ball receivers. Dak Wilson put the ball in perfect places for them to make plays and make contested catches. They didn't get much separation unless they were schemed open. But if it was one-on-one, most of the times they really did not have much separation. So because of that, I don't think competition should play a factor in where you rank Wilson. And that's why I told you I think Denzel Mims is a perfect receiver for Zach Wilson because he's the same type of guy. He's a jump ball receiver. You put him one-on-one with the corner, I'm taking my chances with Mims coming down with the ball. But not only can Mims get the ball, he can jump for the ball, but he's extremely fast. So he's going to separate. I think Zach Wilson and Mims are going to make a great duo if the Jets do draft him, and I think they will draft him.
Yeah, I like Zach Wilson a lot. Obviously, I have not had a chance to watch every quarterback yet. I know you've started to. Based on what I've seen, I have Zach Wilson at 2 in my rankings, and then I would have Fields right below him, and then I would have Lance below him. And then, again, as low as I've been on him, I would have Mac Jones below Lance.
I will say this.
From there, I think it becomes a little blurred.
I've watched 4 games of Wilson so far from this past season. A lot of inconsistency.
Fields.
Yes. Right now, like, I've watched 8 games of Wilson, and my notes on Fields are about to exceed Wilson's in just 4 games. Because with Wilson, it was most of the stuff that, okay, I didn't really have to jot it down because he didn't make much mistakes. I usually jot down a lot of the mistakes, and a lot of the good things I just keep in my memory. Fields is a lot of things that I'm worried about in terms of his mechanics and just his inconsistency throwing the ball. Yes, decision-making as well. And Ohio State is a one-read offense. But what I do like about Fields is that I think you can legitimately build an offense around him if you have a zone running scheme offense and kind of use him like Lamar Jackson did when Greg Roman was there. Because he can run the ball really well, and he's great at throwing a deep ball. He has a great deep ball. He's very accurate at that. But sometimes the ball does come out a little bit weird. He doesn't have the tightest spiral and not that much of a quick release. I'm really excited for the draft. Like, I really am, because I don't know where these guys are going to go. Like, I think Trevor's 1, of course.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson is 2. But then
even that's not a sure thing, though.
Yes.
As much as we want it to be, because I agree with you.
I think it's a sure thing. I really do. Then at 4, the Atlanta Falcons, are they going to take Trey Lance or Justin Fields? Or are the Atlanta Falcons going to take Mac Jones, who plays similar to Matt Ryan? Matt Ryan isn't the quickest guy. So he would be a really good fit in Atlanta because Arthur Smith is already working with the quarterback that's not mobile. There. Exactly. But let's say Atlanta, let's say they draft Fields just for the sake of it, because I think hometown kid, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Then at 6, Detroit. Do they go quarterback of the future and get a Lance? Do they get a Lance? I'm not really sure. Do they get a Mac Jones? I don't really know. So I think Detroit might pass on a quarterback, but Carolina is not passing on a quarterback. Yeah. Are they going to go Lance? Are they going to go Jones, Fields if he's there? If Fields is there at 6, are the Eagles going to get him? It's a lot of stuff. That's why I said that in this top 10 draft, in this draft class, there might be 5 quarterbacks that go in the first round.
Oh yeah, I don't think.
No. 5 quarterbacks that go in the top 10.
Yeah, I think Dak's signing today hurt that.
Yes, and that's why if I were Dallas, I would have not paid Dak. I would have drafted Mac Jones at 10 because I think Mac Jones at Alabama, he had a great offensive line and great weapons.
Yep.
If you were to go to Dallas, you would have a good offensive line and great weapons.
Exactly.
Rookie quarterback, rookie contract. It would have been a perfect fit. But they signed Dak, so they are not going quarterback. They're going to go corner. Patrick probably Patrick Surtain is going to be there. They're going to draft him. But this is a crazy draft for quarterbacks. And look, I'm just going to say this. I wouldn't be surprised if Fields does drop out of the top 10.
I would say with complete confidence, like full 100% confidence, the top 5 guys. So Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance Jones, those 5 are going in the top 15. Unless there's some crazy issue between now and draft night, whether it's like health or something on social media, those 5 guys will go in the top 15.
The thing about it is that this, man, is like Dwayne Haskins in 2018. We all thought that he was going to be top 10. And he dropped out to 15, and we know now that Washington was not going to draft him 15. He might have been there later. I'm just saying there is a chance Fields does drop out the top 10. Lance is a wild card because Lance only has 1 full season of him playing. If Lance gets drafted, that's a project. He's sitting for 1 to 2 seasons, guaranteed. He's not ready to play right now. It's crazy because let's say Jaguars, Jets, Falcons, Lions, and Panthers decide to go QB. That's 5 quarterbacks in the draft. Cowboys don't even have the chance to do that. There's a chance Lions draft a quarterback. Carolina, I think they're not sold on Teddy. I think if Mac Jones is there at 8, they're taking Mac Jones. Like, I don't think they're not taking Mac Jones. This is going to be a crazy draft class, but back to these rankings, Trevor Lawrence, to me, would be 1. Zach Wilson would be 2, no doubt. And after that, I really don't know. I can't really make a decision, because I've just started to study Justin Fields. I haven't even went into depth with Trevor Lawrence. I just know when you're 6'6" and can make every throw, I'm going to probably put you first. But once I study more of these guys, I'll probably know. Kellen Mond, I'm not going to study him. I'm going to watch maybe a couple games, but I'm not going to go too crazy. I really don't feel like it's a need. You never know. We might be looking back, and Kellen Mond may be like the next Dak Prescott of this draft, where he gets drafted late and he does well, whatever. But I think this list, of course, it shocked everybody because Lawrence has been the talk of the town in terms of being the next Luck, Manning type prospect. So when somebody comes out and says, no, it's Wilson, it's going to create shockwaves. But I'm telling you, Wilson had a pretty flawless season.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning of the segment, it's not a boy who cried wolf situation. This is a guy in Chris Sims who has hit the nail on the head in the past. Going back to that 2018 draft class, I mean, he nailed that. Like, perfect. The top 5 in order. And now you're looking at the past 2 years, he's been pretty successful. You got to at least give it a second thought here. So it's interesting. There's no question about that.
This is going to be an interesting draft.
I think it's funny because we have had like such differing opinions on Mac Jones and Kellen Mond, and those are the 2 guys who are right next to each other in these rankings.
And
that was
Mac
the part
Jones
I was laughing at.
Mac Jones is 1. Now, I think it is pretty funny, but I'm telling you right now, I think, somebody in the comments just said Joel would rather have Mac Jones than Dak Prescott. Absolutely, 100%, no doubt about it. Because Dak Prescott right now is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I would have never made Dak Prescott the highest quarterback in the NFL. And I love Dak Prescott. I really love Dak Prescott. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. But that Dallas Cowboys roster is not getting better. The offensive line is getting older. Gallup is about to be up to get paid. They don't have a tight end. Their defense is suspect. The Cowboys have a ceiling. Whereas if they would have drafted a Mac Jones, they would have had so much more cap space to work with and make the roster good. So, yes, I would have went for value there, and I would have gotten a Mac Jones because I think he's going to be a good quarterback. Even if he's just a starter. I think Dak, even though he's getting paid he's the highest paid quarterback right now, I'm pretty sure, Dak is not a superstar quarterback. He's a Derek Carr to me. That's what he is. I think he's a really good quarterback. He's pushing great, but he's not a top 5 quarterback, and you can argue he's not a top 10 quarterback. And I'm not paying not a top 10 quarterback that much money, which is why I would take a risk on Jones and let's see if he pans out rather than paying Dak that much money.
Yeah, and they're already in a pretty bad cap situation to begin with. So now just adding this Dak contract on top of that, it's really not a sustainable business model moving forward here. Like, I don't see how they're going to handle this cap situation moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
And I don't think right now they have a championship contending roster.
They don't. Washington football team, if they get a quarterback, that's all over. If they get an offense, that's all over. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, this quarterback list definitely made some shockwaves. In the next coming, probably in 1 or 2 weeks, I'll release my quarterback rankings, and I'll start, and it'll be the start of the next Chris Sims with my quarterback rankings, when everybody waits on the rankings to see when they drop, and then it's there. But we'll see what happens. This is a make or break ranking for me, because
this is the first one.
Yes, this is the first one.
You got to get that credibility.
Yes, I have to. Yes, exactly. I have to do that. So, this is make or break. We'll see what happens. But now on to the next segment. The Patriots, the New England Patriots, their first option at quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. They won him back with the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick has raved about him in the past. He never wanted to trade him to San Francisco. And I mean, what do you think about this move? Do you think it makes sense? Do you think the Patriots should get Jimmy G, or they should look elsewhere?
I mean, you go back to, you hit on it, his stint there in New England. If it was up to Bill Belichick, he would have kept Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady. That was the rumor at the time, and still is the rumor to this day. He worked with Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers on a deal to send him to a place where he could be successful, rather than they had better deals on the table to send him to less successful places, but he tried to look out for him almost like he was like his protege or something. It was strange to read about, but you see that relationship back then, and I think Bill Belichick still looks at him as a guy who he could breed as the future of the Patriots, like he did with Tom Brady when he was younger. And listen, Bill Belichick is a mastermind. If he sees something in you, there's probably a good shot you got something there. I think Jimmy Garoppolo has been really solid with the 49ers. He showed some good signs. The biggest problem has been the health and staying out there on the field. So if he could go to New England and stay on the field, and they were able to surround him with some talent, which has been a big problem since, at the time Tom Brady was leaving and since Tom Brady left, if they could bring in some more talent on that offensive side of the ball, I think it could be a good fit. We saw how he played in, I believe it was those 3 games before he got hurt after Tom Brady was out because of the suspension, and then Brissett came in and did well. But I think it would be a solid fit because of him and Bill Belichick's relationship.
I think it would be the perfect fit. He knows the offense well. He really strives in the short passing game. And I think Jimmy G was getting ready to take the mantle from Tom Brady and become that next great Patriots quarterback. Well, just the next great Patriots quarterback, because before Tom Brady and outside of Drew Bledsoe, they really haven't had any. But I'm high on Jimmy G. I think he is a franchise quarterback. I think he is a really good quarterback. I think because he didn't have a great playoffs with the 49ers because they ran the ball a ton and they didn't ask him to pass at all, and because he missed a lot of throws in the Super Bowl that kind of cost 49ers a game, everybody's perspective and the narrative on Jimmy G has done a complete 360 to where now we view him as a kind of Andy Dalton type quarterback, when I don't think he's that. I think Jimmy G is a great leader. He's a great thrower of the football, and his problem is staying healthy. It is durability. But when he's on the field, 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions in his first year as a starter, 102 quarterback rating, and a record of 24-8 as a starter. People forget that when he was traded to San Fran, he won 5 games in a row. 5 straight games. A team in San Fran that was bottom of the barrel. They were not even competitive. The year that Jimmy G gets injured, a torn ACL, the 49ers have the 2nd pick in the draft. Next year, they're in the Super Bowl. That's the impact that Jimmy G makes on the team. And I don't think the Patriots get Jimmy G because I think the 49ers see that, no, this is our guy. Kyle Shanahan has came out and said it, that Jimmy Garoppolo is their guy. John Lynch has came out and said that he's their guy. But I also have to say that trading Jimmy G does make a lot of financial sense, because if they were to trade him, they would free up $24 million in cap space. But is that worth it when you're giving up a quarterback?
Yeah, where do you go?
Yes, because Nick Mullins is a free agent. C.J. Beathard is a free agent. And Jimmy G is still on the roster. But really, who knows? I think 49ers will keep Jimmy G. But the Patriots trying to make him their first option is not a bad option. It's really not. I think he fits the scheme. Josh McDaniels knows him well. And they never wanted to depart from him in the first place. They always wanted to keep him. They were forced to because Tom Brady basically forced his hand, which he has every right to do because he is Tom Brady, and that's why Jimmy Garoppolo was sent off. But I'm just saying, if Tom Brady sees Jimmy Garoppolo as a guy that he wants to get out of there because he sees Jimmy coming, then everybody else will see Jimmy coming too. Because I'm telling you, last year and what you saw in the playoffs and the Super Bowl is not the real Garoppolo. Like I said, Garoppolo's a great captain. He also has a bright smile. He brightens up everybody's day in the locker room. He has a whole package, man. Jimmy Garoppolo is that guy, and he's going to be successful.
Oh, man. I don't know if he could be a franchise. I don't personally see him as a franchise quarterback. I guess it depends on how you, define the term franchise quarterback. But I think he's more than a good option, and especially for the 49ers who don't run a crazy difficult offense. They run a pretty simple offense. You don't need the quarterback to do too much. Like, you don't need the quarterback to go out there and single-handedly win games for you. I think Jimmy G is a perfect fit there. The money is a tough situation, but again, where are you going elsewhere? Say, would a deal with the Patriots include the 15th overall pick, and then you're looking at drafting a quarterback? And in that situation, are you trusting that one of the top 5 guys is falling to 15? I think that's another big risk. So, and then other than that, are you going to try and trade up twice? So you're going to trade up with the Patriots to get 15 and then move up from that spot to get a quarterback. I just think it's not a great situation outside of Jimmy G. Like, if you start to explore options moving on from him, unless you're talking about a Deshaun Watson trade, which I think would cost more than the 49ers would like to give up, I don't think there's many better options on the market right now for them. So I don't think it would be wise for the Niners to move on from him. But if the Patriots could pull it off, I think it's the best option available for them. I think you said it before when you were talking about Joe Lombardi and Sean Payton. Familiarity is better than ability sometimes. I think Jimmy G's familiarity with the system would be huge, especially in a place like New England where that system has worked for years.
And this is the thing, Jack, I'm going to say it now. The Patriots had a ton of opt-outs last season. Dante Hightower's coming back. Lawrence Guy. I think Lawrence Guy played. I know they had Patrick Chung is coming back. Yeah. They had a lot of opt-outs. Next season, they're going to have a great defense, possibly an elite defense again, because I'm never going to count out Bill Belichick and his defensive scheme. Their offense, I think in this draft, they draft a receiver. They get a weapon because they need one badly. And I'm just saying, I did a mock draft on PFF Simulator. It's not a far-fetched idea that Kyle Pitts could be dropping out the top 10. I don't think it's far-fetched based on needs, and especially if 5 QBs go in the top 10. Yeah, there's a possibility. There is a huge possibility. So if they could trade out for a Pitts and get a tight end, or maybe in the second round get a Pat Freiermuth out of Penn State, that would be huge. But they need to build this offense, and I think whether it's bringing back Cam Newton, trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, whoever it may be, the Patriots have a chance to shock a lot of people next season, because I think this was a down year. It was a weird year because of COVID, but Patriots at full strength, I will not count them out.
Yeah, and if you could get Pitts at 15, that'll be the steal of the draft, in my opinion. Yeah. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the draft overall, and he would fit that Patriots system perfectly.
The reason I don't think he'll be there at 15, I think he might drop out the top 10 but not 15, is because Arizona is picking 14.
And they need a weapon
they need a tight end. They need a tight end. So they're going to pick Kyle Pitts if he's there, no doubt about it. They might even trade up a few spots to get him. That's why I think the Patriots would have to trade up, but I don't think it's a far-fetched conclusion that he could be dropping out the top 10. But the Patriots have options. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith if he drops that far. You got Rashad Bateman maybe, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. So there are a lot of guys that they can try to target. We'll see what happens, but they need to fill that position bad.
Could one of those top 3 receivers fall to them? Whether it's Waddle.
Maybe Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith
his stock's fallen since the college football playoffs.
Devontae Smith is the only guy because he has to be in the right system. But I think the Patriots are the right system for him because they excel at the short passing game. They do a lot of screens. So he fits that system. Devontae Smith has to go to the right team. And I think I don't think Smith is a player that you can place on any team, on any scheme, and he'll be successful. I think Jamar Chase is that. Jalen Waddle, I'm on the fence about him being that. I think Devontae Smith, he needs to go to the right offense and the right offensive coordinator. But now, moving on from the New England Patriots, we're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. So news just broke. Literally 10 minutes before we started to record this podcast, this news broke. The Cowboys are giving Dak Prescott a 4-year, $160 million deal. So $40 million a year, including $126 million guaranteed. And the first 3 years averaged $42 million a year. And the deal includes a no-trade clause and a no-tag clause, so they can't franchise tag him or trade him. And I believe as well, his signing bonus is $66 million. And that's the highest signing bonus in NFL history. Second is Russell Wilson at $65 million. So, yeah, the Cowboys signed Dak Prescott long-term. I did not think this was going to happen. I thought this wasn't going to happen. I thought they were going to franchise tag him again, and he was going to be a free agent next season. This is really weird that it happened. I think them signing Dak long-term was a combination of the media pressure to sign him and also sympathy for him getting hurt while playing on the tag and the Cowboys feeling like they have to make things right. And I say that not to say that Dak Prescott doesn't deserve the money, because he does, and I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But for him to be getting paid more than Russell Wilson, more than Mahomes, it's pretty ludicrous. It's pretty crazy. And the Cowboys have now handicapped themselves with this current roster, which is not a Super Bowl contending roster. Them signing Dak Prescott long-term after seeing what the Rams were with Jared Goff, after seeing what the Eagles became with Carson Wentz, was the stupidest move that this franchise could have ever made. They don't even have a solid foundation in Mike McCarthy. We don't even know what he's going to be. This was a bad move in my opinion, and this guarantees to me that the Cowboys will not be sniffing the Super Bowl in the next 4 years.
Yeah, and one of the interesting parts of this deal, just a side note, they are franchise tagging him tomorrow, I think, as a piece to make the deal work, and then they're going to sign him long term. So once his 4-year deal is up, he is an unrestricted free agent, and they cannot tag him. So that's a pretty rare thing in the NFL. Usually you play out your contract, they can tag you for 3 years, I think. But now that they have used another tag on Dak Prescott, he'll be an outright free agent in 4 years. So an interesting part of the deal there. But I agree with you in the sense that it was a strange deal for me just because the cap situation they're in and where they're at as a roster. I don't think they're ready to compete. I would have felt better about the deal if we would have seen Dak Prescott play a whole season the way he did the first 4 or 5 games of the season, because he was looking like an elite quarterback to start the year. It's just...
and losing.
Yeah, was that a product of being in games where they were down late and he had to throw the ball like crazy against prevent defenses? Who knows? He looked really good to start the season, but is that sustainable? 1. 2, is he going to come back from the injury the same? It's a lot of question marks to be paying a guy the most or second most money for a quarterback in the league over the next 4 years. I think it's a huge risk, especially for a team. You know, if you had told me that it's the same situation, but it's Patrick Mahomes instead of Dak Prescott, it's a different story. But as much as I like Dak Prescott, I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think he's a borderline top 10 quarterback in the league. I would have him on the right side of the 10 rather than on the outside looking in. But still, I don't think a guy at that level is worth this much money, especially for the cap situation they're in.
The reason why you're okay with paying Mahomes is because Mahomes has accomplished something already. This is the hard truth, but if the Kansas City Chiefs don't win another Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes, his career was still successful because he brought the Chiefs their first Super Bowl in NFL history. I'm pretty sure. They might have won before, but I'm pretty sure it was their first Super Bowl in a long, long time. So because of that, he deserves that money. Russell Wilson has brought underwhelming rosters to the playoffs, and he has a ring already. Aaron Rodgers has a ring already. A lot of these quarterbacks that got big superstar money have won their rings already, outside of Deshaun Watson and now Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is not a superstar quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. Their offensive line is diminishing already. Their weapons are still there. Their defense is really suspect. Dan Quinn was hired, so maybe he does fix up their defense. He's going to run a cover 3 scheme. We'll see how that goes. But I just can't help to feel that this was a bad move. Because unless the cap skyrockets in the next couple of years, the Cowboys are pretty much dead in the water in terms of what they can do with the roster. I just don't know how you can see the trend of quarterbacks getting paid and pay a quarterback that's not in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, especially in such a loaded quarterback draft class, which is this draft class right now, that we have 5 quarterbacks that have a ton of potential. It's just a weird move.
Yeah, that's the problem with a guy like Mahomes' contract. Like, he resets the market, and then that's the bar for everybody else to shoot for. But Mahomes, like, he is far and away better than a lot of these guys who are going to be receiving contracts coming up. And not meant as any disrespect to Dak Prescott, he's a much better quarterback than Dak Prescott. And so they shouldn't be close money-wise, but it's because Mahomes reset the market for quarterbacks that Dak is going to even get close to that. And it's just how the cycle goes, and it really screwed the Cowboys because of the timing of things. But I think you're going to see a lot of overhaul with this Cowboys roster in the next coming years. I think Ezekiel Elliott will be a guy that they'll try and look to do something with that contract. Amari Cooper is another guy. And there's a few more other names, but they have so many big contracts on the books. Eventually, they're going to have to start changing things there.
I'm going to do an overview of the dumbest decisions the Cowboys have made in the past couple of years. Number 1 was sign Ezekiel Elliott, which was sign a running back to a big contract, and we already know how that story ends up most of the time. Just ask the Rams with Todd Gurley. They paid an inside linebacker in Jalen Smith big money. He wasn't even a top linebacker at the time, and they paid him big money. They paid the least 2 important positions on the field big money to long-term deals in Ezekiel Elliott and Jalen Smith. When I thought Tony Pollard was really ready to take the reins, I'm in love with Tony Pollard's game.
He's looked pretty good.
Yes, I really love Tony Pollard. Then, Dak Prescott. The quarterback position is the most important position on the field, and you have to take care of that position. But Dak Prescott, paying him $42 million is right there with those moves as some of the worst moves. Because this contract, this signing, guarantees the Cowboys will not win the Super Bowl. And when you look at the NFC East and how the Washington football team is looking, it doesn't guarantee they'll win the division. I'm not even sure they'll win the division. If the Cowboys win a division only 2 times out of the 4 years of Dak's contract, that's a complete and utter failure.
Yeah, I would feel better about a team like the Washington football team making a move like this. I think they're more ready to compete playoff-wise than the Cowboys are with their current roster. And it's not meant as a dig at Dak Prescott because I think he's earned his money and he deserved a big-time contract. But it's just about where you are as a team, as a roster, your cap situation. I don't think the Cowboys were in any position to hand out a contract like this. And I think they might have been better served moving on at the quarterback position, especially in such a deep quarterback class where they could have reset their cap situation in the next 5 years with a potential stud quarterback on a rookie deal.
The last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl was in 1996. So right now they're on a 25-year Super Bowl drought. If you're listening, if you're a Cowboys fan and you're watching this, get ready for it to be 30 plus, because it's not going to happen in the next 4 years and in the next 5, if we're being honest.
Wow.
They are going to have a 30-year plus playoff drought in one of the biggest markets in the NFL, in what the Dallas Cowboys are called the America's team. And I guess just like America, they are making bad decisions as well, because they're making another bad decision. This was a bad decision.
They set themselves up for failure, I think. I think everything led to this being an impossible situation to win, because Dak is your guy. You wanted to have him here long term, but you put yourself in such a position money-wise that it really wasn't a viable option to splurge on Dak, and now they've done it, and they are going to have to pull Cap Olympics over the next 4 years to make this work. I just don't see it working out for them, especially like you said in the division. The Washington football team is really good. Even the Giants have showed some promise. I think the Eagles still got a ways to go, but I don't think this makes the Eagles division, definites for the next
Cowboys?
4 years. Yeah, that's what I meant. What did I say?
You said Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think this makes the Cowboys the division. I don't even know if it makes them the favorites, depending on what the football team does at quarterback.
Yeah, it doesn't. Now we're going to go into our final 2 segments of the episode. The next segment we'll be going into is, and wow, I think this TV just froze up on me. Ridiculous. So the final 2 segments we will be talking about is the Washington football team and the New York Giants. Will be previewing their offseason, and we're going to start out with the Washington football team. I'm just going to get the graphic up on the screen. Now I finally have it. The Washington football team's offseason. Let's see what happens with them. Okay. Right now, the Washington football team has $54 million in cap space. They cut Alex Smith already, which was a potential cut that they were going to have there. And they have no real cap casualties. I mean, all of their good players are on rookie deals. You look at their defensive line, Chase Young, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Montez Sweat, they're all on a rookie contract. So they're good there. Cameron Curl, an emerging corner, is on the rookie deal. So they don't have any roster cuts pretty much. They really don't. Maybe John Bostic, but that's about it. Then you look at their pending free agents, Brandon Scherff, Ryan Kerrigan.
Supposedly, Brandon Scherff got the tag as we were recording.
Okay.
I have not confirmed that, but supposedly he did.
Okay. So Ryan Kerrigan, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Ronald Darby, Dustin Hopkins, Kyle Allen, Cam Sims, and Kyle Allen and Cam Sims are restricted free agents. Ryan Anderson and David Sharp. So you mentioned Brandon Scherff probably got the tag. Yes, and that was a smart move to make, because he should have got the franchise tag, because he's their best offensive lineman right now. But outside of keeping Brandon Scherff, I'm really not mad if they lose anybody else outside of Ronald Darby. I think Ronald Darby played really well this past season next to Kendall Fuller. Because of that, I'd bring him back. But everybody else, Ryan Kerrigan is up there in age. You already have a dominant front four. I don't think there's a reason to bring him back. Kevin Pierre-Louis, I think you could bring him back. He's a good linebacker. He's an okay linebacker. Dustin Hopkins, inconsistent kicker, but probably they bring him back. And, outside of that, I really don't care who else leaves. I mean, Ronald Darby, Ronald Darby, I think, is a definite stay, in my opinion. Ryan Kerrigan goes elsewhere. Kevin Pierre-Louis stays, and Dustin Hopkins stays.
Yeah, I think Brandon Scherff was a no-brainer. I'm glad they brought him back. Well, I'm not glad as a Jet fan, because that was one of my targets for the Jets. But as, looking at it through the Washington football team lens, I'm glad they brought him back. I think, like you said, Ronald Darby is another guy I would definitely bring back. Ryan Kerrigan I would let walk. 2 other guys I would consider, I wouldn't say they were musts, would be David Sharp, just because that right side of the line and the tackle spots are a little bit questionable. So I would think about bringing him back, depending on what you're looking to do this offseason. And then Cam Sims is another guy. They're a little bit weak at wide receiver. I don't know how they plan on attacking that wide receiver market, if they're planning on splurging for one big name or going out and filling it out with 2 or 3, lower level options. I think bringing back Cam Sims can be a a money saving option to bring him back. I don't think he'll require that much money.
Their positions of needs right now are quarterback, wide receiver, outside of McLaurin, tackle, and inside linebacker, in my opinion. I think at the right side of the line at tackle, Morgan Moses is a good tackle. I think he's fine. He's manageable. I'd keep him. I think they have to address the left tackle, quarterback, of course, and wide receiver. And we've done a segment on this, trading for Darnold or Minshew, maybe Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe they sign Jacoby Brissett or Andy Dalton or Ryan Fitzpatrick. In my opinion, I'm trading for Gardner Minshew. I've already said this multiple times. I'm trading for Gardner Minshew if I'm the Washington football team. I think he's a good game manager, which is what the Washington football team needs. I think he's a really underrated quarterback and can win in a good situation. And when we talk about wide receivers, there are some good ones like Tim Patrick out there. Golden Tate just got released by the Giants. Maybe he can be an option. Adam Humphries. But the guy I'm looking at is the guy on the screen, Curtis Samuel. I want to see Curtis Samuel there because not only can he line up in the slot or outside, but he played running back in college and he played running back some snaps in Carolina. He's a very versatile player, and he can play next to Terry McLaurin really well.
Yeah, at the quarterback position, I can see them doing a couple different things. Like you mentioned, the trades for Darnold or Minshew are options. A guy you didn't mention that I think could be on the table for him, Cam Newton, maybe a reunion with him and Ron Rivera. I don't think his year in New England last year was as bad as people make it out to be, so maybe that's an option. The well is kind of drying up a little bit. I think Dak Prescott would have been the guy they would have been after if he didn't go back to Dallas, but now they got to start to bank on some less popular options, I guess you would say, for lack of a better word. So they got a couple options there, not as many good ones as I thought they had at the beginning of the offseason. I think wide receiver is another really important position. You mentioned the guy that I had in mind, Curtis Samuel, for his versatility, for his familiarity with Ron Rivera's system. I think it would be a good fit, and I think he won't command as much as one of those top-tier receivers. He would be a really good number 2 next to Terry McLaurin. At the offensive line spot, I think you could fill in that hole with maybe a veteran like Alejandro Villanueva, but they definitely got to shore up that tackle spot, so I think that's somewhere to look. I would also look linebacker, and they have some good money, so they can afford to splurge. I was thinking maybe a guy like Matt Milano would be a good guy for them to target, but they are really in a great money situation. I think they have the 4th most cap in the league, so they can really go out and make some big-time signings this offseason, and they could position themselves to be the favorites in the NFC East.
I like Logan Thomas, but I think they could use another tight end. I would address it in the draft, but in free agency, you got guys like Hunter Henry. I don't think they go out and spend for Hunter Henry, but Kyle Rudolph just got released by the Vikings. He's a good option. Jared Cook, Jacob Hollister, Gerald Everett, Jonnu Smith are some potential options. Then at tackle, you mentioned Alejandro Villanueva. I'm looking at Russell Okung. I think he's younger. He's 33. Villanueva's 38. Russell Okung has a lot of good years left, and he's a good tackle. Villanueva's coming off a down year, so I target Russell Okung. Then at inside linebacker, Gerard Davis, a former first-round pick from the Lions. Maybe Jack Del Rio can rejuvenate his career. It'd be a low-risk, high-reward type of signing. Christian Kirksey, maybe. Neville Hewitt, who played okay with the Jets. Jayon Brown from the Titans. They're not going to be able to re-sign him. And Anthony Walker Jr., middle linebacker from the Colts, I think would be another good viable option. He's not very athletic, but he's a great locker room guy, and he's a leader, and he's an okay linebacker. And I think when you look at the Washington football team's defense, the worst group on their defense is a linebacker spot. Yeah. They don't have good linebackers. So I think they have to address that, no doubt about it. But overall, I think in free agency and in the offseason before the draft, I have them trading for Minshew, signing Curtis Samuel, signing Russell Okung, and signing Gerard Davis.
It's a good offseason.
Yeah, and I have them drafting a linebacker too. So Gerard Davis as a low-risk guy. And then when you talk about the draft, they have the 19th pick in the first round. And even though they signed Curtis Samuel, I don't want it to stop there. You got guys in the first round like Rondale Moore, Rashad Bateman. Listen, Rondale Moore is similar to Curtis Samuel. So I'm going Rashad Bateman with the 19th pick in the draft, and I'm having a receiving core of Rashad Bateman, McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel. I think that is one hell of a receiving core.
Yeah, I was also looking receiver, whether it was Bateman, Kadarius Toney, maybe Terrace Marshall from LSU, who was, breeded good receivers over the last couple of years. But I think they should also go receiver with that first-round pick. And for whatever quarterback is coming in, add another weapon. Antonio Gibson, like you said, Curtis Samuel, and Terry McLaurin with one of these rookie wide receivers. That would be not only a much improved offense, but a really good offense.
Then some other names in the draft. Dylan Radins, a left tackle from North Dakota State. Alex Leatherwood, Carlos Basham, Pat Freiermuth, a tight end. Maybe in the second round they can get him. Jamin Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. Jabril Cox, Eric Stokes, corner out of Georgia, and Brevin Jordan, a tight end they could target later. And maybe they take a risk on Jamie Newman. I don't think that's out of the question in the later rounds of the draft. For me, I think the draft, if this was the dream draft for me, it looks like this. Rashad Bateman in the first round, Jabril Cox in the second, Eric Stokes in the third, and Jamie Newman in the fourth. I think that Eric Stokes, Washington needs a third corner. They have Ronald Darby, who he might not even be back, but let's assume he is. Darby, Fuller, and now you need a third corner. I think Eric Stokes can fill that role, and Jamie Newman, a project, and Jabril Cox, an inside linebacker. They can go Jamin Davis or Jabril Cox there. I'd lean towards Jabril Cox. I think he'd be a good inside linebacker for them if Jarrad Davis does not pan out.
Yeah, and you kind of took one of my picks. I think that they're another team that sitting at 19, they're not going to be in on those top 5 quarterbacks. So I think it would make more sense for them to sit back in the later rounds and go after a guy like Jamie Newman or Kellen Mond in the later rounds. It's the contingency plan I've given it for pretty much every team that's been looking for a quarterback and couldn't get one of those top 5 guys. So I would look at those two in the later rounds, and it could be a little bit of a building block. Maybe you bring in a veteran this season like Brissett, Cam Newton, somebody like that, and then you could look at one of those two guys for the future, try and breed them under Ron Rivera.
This is my dream depth chart for the Washington football team next season in 2021. Gardner Minshew, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Rashad Bateman, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, Russell Okung, Wes Schweitzer, Chase Rulier, Braden Scherf, Morgan Moses. Then on defense, Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Montez Sweat, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Jabril Cox, Cole Holcomb, Kendall Fuller, Ronald Darby, Landon Collins, and Cameron Curl. And I might have pronounced some of those names wrong. I'm not too familiar with the players' names on the Washington football team, but that would be my dream offseason for them. I think offense is number one. That defense is already elite. They just need to figure out that offense. And with the additions of Bateman and Curtis Samuel and Russell Okung, I think this can be one of the better offenses in the NFL. And Minshew. I think Minshew's a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I think that they should be favorites in the NFC East next year. With their cap space and what they did towards the end of last season and how much they're bringing back, I think they should, whichever way they end up going this offseason, they should be the favorites in the NFC East.
Yep, and now we're going to go on to another NFC East team. We're going to talk about the New York Giants. Is it a potential breakout year for Daniel Jones? We'll preview their offseason right now. So I was surprised by this. They only have $6 million in cap space. So even though they have a quarterback on a rookie deal, they don't have much to work with in free agency, but they have some potential cuts. Nate Soldier is one of them. They can cut him and save $6 million a year. Kevin Zeitler would save $12 million. That's huge, but he's actually a really good player, so that would make it tough to do that. Levine Toloilo, I think that's his name, is $3 billion. He would save $3 million. And this might be a surprise cut, but Jabril Peppers, I mean, if they were to cut him, they'd save $6 million. And do they really need Jabril when they have Xavier McKinney, a safety they drafted, Logan Ryan, playing safety, another guy in Julian Love who he plays corner but can play safety as well. It just seems for me that if they want to, because they have two big-time free agents, Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. Is it worth keeping Jabril if you can't keep both Leonard and Dalvin Tomlinson? I don't think it is. You know, in my dream offseason for the Giants, I want them to keep Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. So I wouldn't be surprised with cutting Jabril. But if the Giants were to cut everybody but Jabril Peppers, they'd have $26 million in cap space. If they were to cut Jabril, they'd have $32 million in cap space. And I think $32 million is enough to re-sign Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson. So I think that would make sense. But
did they release Golden Tate already?
Yeah, they did.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I read that right.
So they're pending free agent state. Leonard Williams is one, Kyler Fackrell, Cameron Fleming, Dalvin Tomlinson, Jabal Sheard, and all of the running backs outside of Saquon are free agents. Wayne Gallman, Deion Lewis, Devontae Freeman, and Alfred Morris. I mean, in my opinion, I just want them to bring back Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson and maybe Cameron Fleming for some offensive line depth, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think that Leonard Williams is the guy they definitely have to bring back. He was so big for that team last year and has really exploded onto the scene for them after struggling with the Jets the last couple of years he was there. I think the change of scenery was big for him. He was a huge part of that defense. I would lean towards keeping Cam Fleming. I would love to keep Dalvin Tomlinson too, but if it came down to those two guys, I think I would go with Fleming over Tomlinson just because I think that defensive line is a little bit more set than the offensive line, and I would prioritize keeping that offensive line as familiar as possible. They got better as the season went on last year. I think keeping that familiarity would be good. And as much as I wouldn't want to lose Tomlinson, I think they're in a better position to lose him on that defensive line than they are to lose Fleming on the offensive line.
So the positions of need, I think they need a center, they need a tackle, and they need a number one wide receiver because right now they have number twos, but they don't have a number one. So they don't have the cap space to target a number one. So they're going to have to get that position in the draft. But in terms of center, Ted Karras is a guy, maybe Austin Reiter, and at tackle, Matt Filer, or maybe a reunion with Mike Remmers, even though Mike Remmers was pretty bad with the Giants. Then at guard, maybe Kelechi Osemele, G.J. Fluker, or a guy who recently got released, and Gabe Jackson from the Raiders. He could be a huge addition. But honestly, with their cap situation, it's going to be hard to target any of these free agents. It just seems like the team that they had last year is a team they're going to have this upcoming season. They're not going to make much improvements.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. With the money, it's going to be really tough to add anybody big time. I think the draft is going to be the big move for them. At center, a guy I was thinking was Alex Mack, but I think they're going to have a tough time adding anybody substantial in free agency just because, like, the big position that you would want to splash at, I think, for them this offseason would be wide receiver. And I don't think money-wise they'll be able to be in on even, like, a Curtis Samuel because I think he could get bigger money from a team like Washington, who has great cap space and has just as much of a need, if not more, for a guy like Samuel. So I think the draft is going to be the place where the Giants make their bread and butter this season.
So in the draft, they have the 11th overall pick. Wide receivers, I think they could target Jalen Waddle. Maybe if Devontae Smith falls there. Terrace Marshall Jr. is too high for me. That's more the second. Maybe Tutu Atwell in the second or Elijah Moore in the second. And maybe in the later rounds, Tamarion Terry could be a target. Offensive line, Elijah Vera Tucker, Christian Darrisaw, Rashawn Slater, Sam Cosmi, Tevin Jenkins. These are all guys that can target. For me, I think they have to go offensive line. I know that a number one receiver is a priority, but I think some offensive line depth is even more of a priority. I mean, right now, they don't have much. If Kevin Zeitler gets cut, which might be possible, because if they don't have a trade partner, he's probably going to get cut. They don't have any guards. Will Hernandez is average at best. Shane LeMahieu was pretty bad last season. He started about 9 games, I believe, but he wasn't anything special. Andrew Thomas flashed late in the season, so I think you're okay at tackle. And Cameron Fleming, he's a free agent, so if he's not back, who's going to be the right tackle? And at center, Nick Gates, do you want him to be your longtime center? I just think they need to get an offensive lineman, and in my opinion, that guy is Elijah Vera Tucker, because Christian Darrisaw, I like him. Rashawn Slater, I don't think he'll be there. But Elijah Vera Tucker, I like him more than Darrisaw because Vera Tucker can play guard and he can play tackle. He has feet like a tackle, so he's more of a tackle. And that added versatility just makes him more of an option at that 11th overall pick, because I think he's the best value. He's the best bang for your buck at number 11.
I was thinking the same thing. If you want to go offensive line, you could. Darrisaw, Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, one of those three, if not two or three of those three, will be there at 11. But you could also go with a weapon at 11, whether it's Smith, Waddle. I don't think Chase will be there. I think Chase is going to be the first wide receiver off the board. But one of those three guys, or Kyle Pitts, might also be there at 11. I know they have Evan Ingram, but I've read people saying that Kyle Pitts is projecting to be more of a wide receiver at the NFL level than a tight end, or at least a wide receiver in a tight end's body. So I don't think it would be a bad pick at all to get him at 11. I think you could play him and Ingram at the same time. So, if they wanted to go weapon, there are more than enough options at that 11th overall pick. And there's more later in the draft, too. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another guy I was thinking of. Chris Olave is a guy later on they could target. Dwayne Eskridge later on in the draft, going deep into the draft. So they could go weapon with the 11th pick, but I think it makes more sense to go offensive line there and target wide receiver later on, because this is a deep wide receiver draft.
Yeah, maybe center later on too. Quinn Miners, Landon Dickerson, Creed Humphrey, Josh Myers. Those are some options. Three of those guys, probably all four, will not be picked in the first round.
Yeah.
They'll be second round and further picks. So I think they also need to get a center. Nick Gates is okay, but I think they can use an upgrade. Then I think they need an inside linebacker to complement Blake Martinez. I think Jamin Davis, I'm really high on Jamin Davis. If they can get him in the third round, I'd be okay with it. Maybe in the fourth, but I wouldn't spend a top 3 round pick on an inside linebacker. But then I think also cornerback. They need another cornerback. Tyson Campbell, Greg Newsome II, Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky, Eric Stokes, Paulson Adebo, I think that's his name, Adebo,
yeah,
and Asante Samuel Jr. These are all guys you can target, but for me, the priority in this draft is to get offensive lineman, receiver. Then you look at defense, but I think it's all about getting a lineman and then receiver and then everything else.
They could also look potentially edge later on in the draft. Carlos Basham and Quincy Roche are guys they could look at later on. But I agree, offense is the main priority in the draft. They'll be able to get great options at 2 positions of need at 11. And then even later on in the draft, I think offensive line and wide receiver, this is the draft to be in if those are your 2 holes. And I think they'll have a good chance at filling those 2 holes with some viable options to start next year and make an impact from day one.
So my dream draft for the Giants is to draft Elijah Vera Tucker at 11, in the second round, Landon Dickerson, then Eric Stokes later, then Tamarion Terry later in the draft, because I think he has a really high upside. And my depth chart for them would be on offense: Daniel Jones, Saquon, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Dante Pettis, Evan Ingram, Andrew Thomas, Will Hernandez, Landon Dickerson / Nick Gates, Elijah Vera Tucker at the other guard spot, and then at tackle, Mike Remmers / Matt Filer or / Cameron Fleming could be that tackle spot, or Vera Tucker can play tackle there. It really depends. But then on defense, I have them having Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams. In my offseason, I want to keep both of them. So I'm going to re-sign both of them. Lorenzo Carter, Blake Martinez, O'Shane Jimenez, James Bradbury, Eric Stokes, Julian Love, Logan Ryan, and Xavier McKinney. In my offseason, I have them cutting Jabril Peppers, which I know is a hot subject because he is a really good player, but I think them drafting Xavier McKinney makes Jabril expendable. So because of that, I think it would be a wise financial move to do it, but I don't think they will cut Jabril. So Jabril can easily be slotted here, and this is pretty much the same team. The Giants just really have to hope that Daniel Jones breaks out in his third year and is more comfortable with Jason Garrett, because this team is not getting much better. because they don't have much cap space to do so.
I'll say getting Saquon back, I think, will be a huge help if he can come back as the same guy. Getting a receiver in the draft, because they certainly will do that, will be a huge help. And staying healthy, hopefully for them, knock on wood, would be a huge help because injuries really derailed them last season. I think it hurt Daniel Jones' development. And he still showed some signs late in the season that he was at least improving a little bit, especially in that turnover battle. He still had issues with it towards the end of the year, but he got better. And that's going to be the main key for him is the turnovers. Can he cut down on the turnovers? If he can, I think he could be a solid option for them for the next decade. But it's all about cutting down the turnovers. I think having those weapons will help him. And if they hit this offseason, they could be in the race for the NFC East next year.
Yeah, I agree. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Pick a Side Podcast. This was episode 74. As always, if you guys enjoy our podcast, you're a fan of the podcast, give us a review and write a review on Apple Podcasts. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Pick a Side Podcast and on Twitter at Pick a Side Pod. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. So we are about to take a couple callers. So if you guys want to call into the show, you guys can. We're going to put the number up in a few, in probably like a minute or so you guys could call into the show. Yeah, I didn't know the Giants were that messed up cap space wise.
Yeah, I thought they were in a better position. And I mean, I guess with some cuts, they could be in a better spot, but still, I even with cuts, I thought that they were in a better cap space, but
you can just raise the volume on the Bluetooth
all the way.
Yeah, like right there is good. Thank you, Manny. We appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in for so long. I know this was a pretty long episode, 2 hours.
Thank you guys for watching. I didn't think this was going to be that long of an episode because we didn't have that many topics, but
the quarterback rankings segment went pretty wild. Yeah,
that was the one that killed us. One league. So this is from Adam Schefter. One league source on the Dak Prescott deal. You know what this is? This is Jerry Jones tipping off the extraordinary TV deal that is coming. It's a good point. If anybody knows, it would be Jerry.
Maybe. That's crazy, though. Isaiah Wilson to the Dolphins, that's a pretty good get if he can live up to his potential. So if you guys want to call in, you guys can. We'll be here for about a couple more minutes. If nobody calls in, we'll end the episode short. But if you guys would like to call in, we'll take your call. So feel free.
I miss the NBA.
Yeah.
It's so weird going days without it after having it every night for the past few months. I don't know what I did without the NBA for like 6 months last year.
Hello? Hey, what's up, Leo? How you doing?
Good.
There we go.
What's up?
Right.
What's up?
Oh, so, my question was, is since Cowboys signed Dak Prescott, even though I think he's had a right to get paid, the money wise, like per year, is like I kind of disagree, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. But my question was, since they pay him, what's the number one reason for now that the Cowboys need to improve?
Cornerback. I think in the draft, they're in a great position to draft either Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain. So I think they're going to draft one of those guys in the draft. And I think that's their biggest position of need because their defensive line is not too bad. Their linebacking core is not too bad with Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith. But their secondary needs a lot of help. So they need to address that position.
I totally agree because I know you mentioned like the Cowboys make the dumb reason, like you say like Zeke paid or Jay Smith paid. You know, I kind of okay with both of them. Dak Prescott get paid, I kind of okay with it. But I thought the bigger mistake for last season is like is didn't pay Byron Jones, but pay Amari Cooper. Soon let you draft CD Lamb, which I thought it made no sense because as great you had 3 wide receivers, but you can't keep all of them at the same time. So I thought that number one issue is corner. So I thought like you mentioned, y'all mentioned Caleb and Patrick. I thought like they should draft Patrick because I think they need more a corner who's a little more aggressive on man-to-man coverage and can easily rail tackling, especially his former college teammate is Trevor Diggs.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Patrick Surtain is going to be a really good player. I think you can put him on a team's best number one receiver, and he can do really well. He is a guy you can put on an island, and he do fantastic. He's a man-to-man corner.
Yeah, and supposedly Surtain and Farley are 2 of the better cornerback prospects in the last, at least 5 to 10 years. You know, I know that Okuda was in the draft last year, and he was supposed to be generational, but supposedly these 2 guys are supposed to be really good prospects as well.
Okay. And my second question was for the New York Giants is name one player that could trade for it if they had get rid of the salary cap.
That's tough.
Russell Wilson.
Are you going quarterback? I was going more receiver. I think Chris Godwin or Allen Robinson, if they had cap, signing them would be huge because I think they need receiver help. Or getting an offensive lineman, maybe like a Trent Williams or a Brandon Scherf or a Corey Linsley. Like the Giants need all the help they can get on offense because they have nobody to protect Daniel Jones and they don't have a consistent guy who can beat man coverage. Sterling Shepard is always injured. I like Darius Slayton, but he's a number 2. He's not number 1.
Yeah, they kind of have 2 number 2s in Shepard and Slayton, in my opinion. If you could add a big-time number 1 on top of that, that offense would change immediately, in my opinion. Have Saquon a running back, even though the offensive line isn't the greatest, that'd be a pretty good core of weapons to throw the ball to.
I thought they should, y'all mentioned a lot for the free agents, but I did mention, the question, what should they trade for? I always thought, they should get one of the offensive tackles for the Kansas City Chiefs, either Eric Fisher or Mitchell Shepard, because because they're getting older and the contract coming up soon. So I think the best way to do is just get one of the guys so they can protect Daniel Jones, just in case if he improves.
Yeah, I think this is a make or break year for Daniel Jones. If he doesn't perform this season, the Giants are probably going to move on.
Are you sure? Because we're not fully sure about next year. Well, we kind of do, but I kind of do about the next year.
Yeah,
next year QB draft.
And it's also that New York media. If Daniel Jones doesn't perform this year, that New York media is going to jump on him, especially because that defense really started to improve this year. I think the defense is going to be really good next year. Saquon's going to come back. You can be sure they're going to add a receiver, if not in free agency, in the draft. So the pressure on Daniel Jones is going to increase. He's going into his 4th season, his 3rd season, and if they look at what's happening to Sam Darnold, he's essentially being pushed out the door, regardless of what's being caused. The New York media is pushing him out the door, and I think the same thing will happen to Daniel Jones next year if he doesn't show a significant improvement.
Okay, and one more: which player could they get for the Brooklyn Nets? Which player they could get for the trade deadline, before the trade deadline, and the buyout? Because they most likely need a big or some player who really can play defense.
I think JaVale McGee is the best guy that they can still get that makes a lot of sense. And also Bismack Biyombo, too.
All right. That's all. Thank you for answering my question.
No problem, man. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Leo. We appreciate you.
All right. Bye.
So Leo is like an everyday caller now.
Yes, sir.
We have everyday fans.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to take in a few more calls. If you guys want to call in, you guys can. Jones was drafted to handle the media. I think to a certain extent. I mean, he doesn't do too much. He's not too crazy. Doesn't say the wrong things.
It's not even about Jones as much as the organization. Like, I think the organization will feel the heat more than Daniel Jones will about getting a new quarterback in there. And if they don't, it'll be the ire will be turned from Daniel Jones to the organization, and why are you not moving on from him? So,
and all I know is I think, what day is a draft?
April. Let me look it up.
What day though? Like Friday, Thursday. Well, if it's on a Thursday, we'll probably go live for the draft, and we'll make that an episode.
2021 NFL Draft will begin at 8 a.m. on Thursday, April 29th, and ends on Saturday, May 1st.
I don't think it's at 8 a.m.
No,
I think
it's not. That's definitely wrong. That was Google.
I think it might be Thursday though. Don't you agree Herbert is better than Lawrence? I mean, I haven't seen Lawrence play in the NFL yet.
That's what Chris Sims said.
That Herbert's better than Lawrence?
He said that Herbert had a better-looking arm coming out of college than Trevor Lawrence did.
No, yeah, no doubt about it. I think
rankings.
Herbert has had one of the strongest arms that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, the draft is on a Thursday.
That's pretty dope. We'll probably go live for the draft then. I think I'll say this. Herbert, I would give the edge to Herbert because I haven't seen Lawrence play in the NFL yet. But we have to see them play first. So if you guys want to call in, you guys can. But yeah, man, I'm excited for the draft. I feel like it's going to be a crazy draft.
I'm just excited for the offseason. Like, I want the offseason to be over. I'm tired of the skepticism. I just want the Jets to be locked in. I want to see who we do at quarterback.
I just hope the Jets take Zach Wilson.
I'm tired of hearing the rumors. I would be happy with Wilson. I would be happy with Watson. Other than that, I would be a little bit disappointed.
I think Herbert is better than Josh Allen at not at the moment, but I think Herbert had a better rookie year than Josh Allen.
If you had
so
to take
he projects to be. I'd probably say Justin Herbert. I can't call at the moment, but do you guys think Griffin starts or comes off the bench? And do you think he'll play power forward or center? I think he'll play small ball center, but if he's starting, he'll play small ball center. If he's coming off the bench, he'll be more of a point forward, so like a power forward off the bench.
I hope he comes off the bench. I think he fits so much better coming off the bench because I think that's what he's going to provide you is some bench scoring and playmaking like we talked about before. I don't think he is meant for the starting lineup, especially with the weapons that the Nets have. They already have enough scoring and playmaking in that starting lineup, and he makes them worse defensively. So I don't see what they gain from him being in the starting lineup other than trying to get him going.
Can you tell me a top tight end drafted in the first round? Really none. A lot of them have not been drafted. George Kittle was not. Rob Gronkowski was not. Travis Kelce was not. The last guys who have been drafted in the first round are like Eric Ebron and TJ Hawkinson. But Tony Gonzalez was drafted in the first round, though. So there are great tight ends that have been drafted in the first round. I think Herbert can be better than Mahomes. That's crazy.
God.
I don't know. I like Mahomes better still. I think Burrow is overrated. It depends on where do you rate him. You know, like I've had somebody tell me that Joe Burrow is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So if you call Burrow a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, I think you're overrating him. But I think he's like around 10 to like 18 area.
Man. Tyler Eifert was pretty good for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, because off the bench, Claxton has had great games in that backup center position, and Griffin's playmaking this team is going to be really fun to watch. Yeah, I agree. Like I think Claxton has been really good this season, and that's why I don't think the Nets need to really make a move for a rim protecting center because I think Claxton can fill that role.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest problems with the move is that I think Blake Griffin is going to cut into those Claxton minutes, which doesn't necessarily hurt now because they still have him on a bit of a restriction coming back from that injury. But I think he was playing excellent defensively, rebounding-wise. Still, you mentioned it before, he's going to have a tough time banging around with like a Joel Embiid or a Jokic if they ever see him, or an Anthony Davis. But I think he can shore up that hole, that glaring hole that they had, and make it, at least a balanced problem for them.
I don't trust Alabama and Ohio State quarterbacks. What do you think?
Don't judge the school, judge the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I know where you're coming from. I mean, but Alabama has not really had great quarterback prospects in the last couple, 20, 30 years. I mean, since I've been alive, they really haven't had great quarterbacks. I mean, Greg McElroy was their starter for a couple years. I mean, can you even name me their starter when they won national championships? You probably couldn't, I think Tua is going to be an okay quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts, given a shot, can be okay. And I think Mac Jones he's going to shock a lot of people. I think people are sleeping on Mac Jones. I know because he's not mobile, he's getting slept on, but I think he has everything else that you like about a quarterback. And Ohio State quarterbacks, I think they don't work because the offense is not an NFL offense. It's a one-read offense. And when we talk about, Dwayne Haskins has talent, but he came out of college too early. He didn't have enough experience, and he wasn't willing to put in the work. I think Justin Fields is an exception because Justin Fields is a hard worker, and it seems like he really cares about football. So I think he can be the exception to Ohio State quarterbacks.
Every school, there's no such thing as a school being a quarterback powerhouse from the jump. Every school had to have the first quarterback. Clemson wasn't known for quarterbacks before Deshaun Watson, and now look, they've had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. So like I said, grade the quarterback, not the school. There could be great quarterbacks coming from terrible schools and terrible quarterbacks coming from schools with a great track record of quarterbacks. Because I've made that same mistake before.
Yeah, I think Austin Eckler is good. Griffin probably plays way better than he is right now because he lacked motivation in Detroit. Yeah, and I agree. I think he would average 15 points off the bench. I think he definitely would. I mean, USC quarterbacks don't pan out, though. They don't.
I think you're just salty about Sam Darnold.
I mean, they don't. Yeah. When he was drafted, I said he's not going to work. He's a USC quarterback. And I kept flip-flopping on it, but I knew in my heart it wasn't going to work.
I would have loved to see his career somewhere else. Not because I'm so sure that he would have been a superstar somewhere else, but I do think he had potential, and I wonder if he was in a better situation, if it would have been different.
Bolts Productions thinks that Herbert is better than Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know you're a Super Chargers fan, but I don't think he's better than Aaron Rodgers. We're getting a call.
If you can't tell, I'm a Chargers super fan. I respect it.
Press.
Hey, what's up?
What's good, y'all?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm good. How about y'all?
We good.
Yeah, so my first question is, do you guys realistically see anybody contending with the Nets to win the title? Like any team that can actually stop them in a 7-game series?
The Lakers, healthy, can take them to 6, maybe 7. And in 7 games, anything can happen. But that's because they have LeBron. I'm always going to give the benefit of the doubt to LeBron because he's LeBron. But realistically, I see nobody. I think the Brooklyn Nets are going to take this championship, barring injury. If they're all healthy, there's no team that can beat the Brooklyn Nets.
I think the Lakers healthy, like Joel said, would definitely be a good matchup. I think the Clippers are an interesting matchup. They played earlier this year, and it was a fun game to watch. I think it would be a great series. The Sixers and the Bucks, I don't think it would be a complete blowout, but I do think the Nets would end up winning those two series. Outside of the Lakers and Clippers, those are the two teams that really give me a second thought as a Net fan, I would say.
And my second question would be, I know I asked you guys this last week, but it's who do you guys realistically see Washington going after that makes them playoff contenders? Because they have a good overall team except that QB position, and they lack in other positions as well. But quarterback is the one they lack in most. Who do you guys see that would take them over that hump of just barely getting to the playoffs to contenders?
I'm going to be honest. It's so – I really don't see any guy who they can trade or sign. Jacoby Brissett is not going to do it. Darnold is not going to do it. Marcus Mariota is not going to do it. Deshaun Watson, maybe, but I don't think they go out and trade for him. And in the draft, I don't think any of the top guys are going to be there when they're picking. So realistically, they just have to go out and get a game manager quarterback. And I think their best bet was hoping that Dak was a free agent.
Yep.
But that didn't happen. So I think they're just going to have to build a very stacked roster and get a good but not great quarterback, and maybe they can get over the hump.
Yeah, I think they missed out on a bunch of the really good options that were available at quarterback this offseason. I don't think Deshaun Watson is a realistic possibility. We mentioned Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew as trade targets, but those two guys are not guys I think put you over the top. I think they're, like Joel said, game managers, free agents. I mean, you could look at a Brissett, you could look at a Cam Newton, maybe a Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota. They could look at Taylor Heineke, who showed some signs in that playoff game last year, but I don't know if there's anybody left out there that really puts them over the top the way I think a Matthew Stafford or a Dak Prescott could have really made them a contender in the NFC, potentially.
And this is my last question. Hypothetically, let's say that Carson Wentz went to Washington. You guys see he might have been quarterback to take him over the hump?
I would have gave it a chance to happen, but the reason why I like him going to the Colts so much is because he's reuniting with his former coach, and I think that means a lot. In Washington, there's not any real connection, so who knows if they would have been able to fix Carson Wentz. But I think it would have been their best case scenario in terms of ceiling wise. It would have been the best case scenario in getting Carson Wentz.
I 100% agree. I think Indy was the best place for Wentz to end up, and I think it gives him the best chance to revive what he once was. But if you're the Washington football team, after Stafford went off the board, I think that Wentz probably would have been the best option outside of Stafford, maybe Dak. I think Dak and Wentz would have been a toss-up if you look ceiling-wise. But yeah, if I was the Washington football team, I definitely would have been on that. Would have been in on him after they lost out on Stafford.
Yeah, those were my only questions. Great episode, and thank y'all for having me on.
All right, thank you for calling. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the support.
Is it just me or there's only two things holding that up?
What?
The tripod.
That tripod right there?
Yeah.
No, there's three. Which ones aren't you seeing?
No, I'm talking about you see what's in the middle?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's supposed to be three.
Oh, why wouldn't there be three? There's three legs.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm looking. I'm like, did it break? Because I don't remember it breaking.
No, there's a third, though.
I don't see it.
You probably can't see it because it's like an optical illusion. It's like behind that middle pole. I think the middle pole is blocking your view of the third, arm. If that makes sense. You get what I'm saying?
No, I see three. I see three legs.
Yeah.
But what in the middle, the thing that holds it
Yeah,
up?
that connects the leg to the middle?
Yeah, I only see two.
Yeah, you don't see the one in the back.
I do see the one in the back. I don't see
which
the one
don't
on
you see?
I don't see the one on the left side.
I think I can see it. I think it might be blending in because of the way the light's hitting it.
Nah, man.
You don't see that at all?
No, I don't. I literally don't.
Yeah.
Are we going to cover MLB? Jack watches baseball, but I don't watch baseball.
If you have any baseball questions, ask me. We were just talking about the Mets yesterday. I'm a Mets fan, by the way.
This is what I see.
That looks weird. But you can see it there. Even though
but I can't see it. I can see it in the picture.
Yeah.
But I can't see it here.
It's because of the way the light's hitting it. I guess the light from here is hitting it so weird. It's blending in with the door. Because I can see what you're saying.
I'm trying to start watching baseball, but I'll probably just watch it during playoffs and enjoy it. But to cover it, I don't know enough to cover it. I feel like I'd just be duping people if I try to cover baseball. Like, I really wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Like, I've been watching basketball and football my entire life. So this is pretty, like, natural to me, just talking football and basketball. But baseball would be such an adjustment. So, guys, we're going to end this live stream now because we don't have a call. But every episode, we are going to take in callers at the end of the episode. And, yep, that's what we're going to do. So, we'll answer this last one from Get OKC a title. I know I just got off a call, but, Jack, can you tell me what happened to the Red Sox?
The Red Sox are a big, a larger market team in a city like Boston that played like a small market team. The MLB has a pretty hard salary, or they don't have a hard salary cap. So the big market teams like the Dodgers can go out and sign pretty much whoever they want. And the Red Sox had to pay Mookie Betts, who is one of the best players in baseball. And they decided that it was not worth giving him the money, which I think was asinine. But now they've put themselves in a position to rebuild. They haven't done a very good job of it. And they went from title contenders to now a pretty bottom-of-the-barrel team, I would say, in 2 or 3 years because they weren't willing to pay their best players. Best player, I should say. Mookie Betts is a top 3 player in baseball, so it's pretty crazy to me. The Indians just did it with Francisco Lindor, and the Mets were the beneficiaries. They went out and got him, but it's a pretty common thing in baseball. Good teams don't like paying their players, and then even when they do, they usually end up trading that contract. The Rockies did with Nolan Arenado. It's a shame, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it with a couple of big names down the line here. Mike Trout is another guy you look at. You would expect him to be an angel for life. He's the best player in baseball, but when teams aren't contending, a lot of times they'll just cut their sunken costs, and I think that's what happened with the Red Sox.
Before you go, don't you agree Keenan Allen is the best wide receiver in the league? He's probably top 10. I would call him the best.
10.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him the best.
I don't even think he's top 5, to be honest. I think he's between 6 and 10.
Manny said Toronto's going to be a problem. I think he's talking about the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I like the Blue Jays. They made a lot of nice moves, and they got some great young talent. Bichette, Guerrero. They went out and got Springer, who I thought would be a Met, but I like the Blue Jays. I don't think they'll win the division because the Yankees are still there, and they have a stacked roster, but I think they'll be a playoff team for sure.
So, yep, thank you guys for tuning into the live stream. We are going to go live on Thursday. That is our next episode. Every Monday and Thursday, we will be going live. Thank you guys for Thank you guys for calling in. Thank you guys for asking these questions. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.